How's it going, everybody? Sorry, I see I see your grind is immaculate. You truly have climbed to the top of the ladder. Even if somebody tried to challenge you now, at this point you've established such a strong foothold at the top of the hill that they'd have to climb twice as fast, at least, to get on your level, bro. Well done. I apologize in advance. I still haven't figured out the friggin' it just keeps going too. There's no ceiling to your power. Oh, whoops, I got the wrong screen up. 1 second. Window capture, and it should be going to this. That's better. Okay. Yeah. It's only going to it's only going to increase. You become drunk on power she's consumed. It'll never stop now. I don't know whether to congratulate you or to stage an intervention, but no, the momentum can't be stopped. Congratulations on receiving or achieving the next tier of your ascension. Well done, well done. Honestly, that kind of cheered me up a little bit. Been having a bit of a gray day, so to speak. Nothing major, nothing really wrong per se, but you just have one of those days or those moments where you're like, literally nothing is going wrong that you can discern or tell, but all of a sudden, just for no reason, all of the energy just like drops out of you. You're just like totally fucking drained, and then it's like you feel stupid because it's like, well, nothing went wrong. Like I'm having a good day, really. This stuff is going great, but it's just like, you know, moving like your hand to pick up your phone to text someone feels like there's a massive weight on it. It's just like so much inertia just pressing you down. You know what I'm talking about? Obviously, not trying to whine too much considering the, the situation that you're in. I'm sure you are also hoping for like recovery soon and all that. So, you know, not to downplay anything on your end. But yeah, it's just one of those things that just kind of hits me every once in a while. Like the energy floor or whatever just falls out from underneath me. It's like, no, I don't even want to do that though. You know, it's just like a very bratty part of my brain that gets summoned. Sorry says I feel that sometimes you just don't want it. Yeah, exactly. Like there's a part of my brain that's just like, I do want to do things. Like I want to pick up guitar and practice today, but it's all the way down the stairs, at least 12 stairs. I don't know. Who has ever been able to successfully go down 12 whole stairs? It's completely unreasonable. It's just like a little whiny part of my brain. Sorry says, what the hell, inertia drift? Oh, I mean, just like, I guess I use the term inertia to kind of refer to how hard it can be to get started. Like I really love going to the gym. I love lifting weights. I, to a lesser extent, but still to a high level, I like jogging and you know, biking and stuff like that. But man, if I haven't been going for a while, going that first time is like literally impossible. I use literally figuratively. And I'll be like for weeks and weeks like, I'm just not up to it today or whatever. And then once I finally go, it's like, holy shit, why did I wait so long? This is awesome, right? Like something switches in my brain immediately when I start working out, and it's amazing. It becomes like the self perpetuating thing, and usually lasts until the next Fromsoft game release, or the next game that I binge, and then it knocks me off my cycle. Sometimes literally. I'm biking. But anyway, that's the inertia is what I would say to the struggle of actually getting started. If you hear random either cat-like screeches or taps and knocks and frantic behavior, I made the brilliant decision of installing, I think I mentioned this last time, of installing a window-mounted suction cup bird feeder right next to my desk near the window, which is great if you like looking at cute birds, but not if you like don't want to get ambushed by cats like slamming into the window at full speed, or just have your whole fucking window shake violently every time it comes, like a bird stops to pick up a seed. So, you know, actually gonna open the blinds and see what's there. 1 second. You're a tap. It's really just the one that keeps coming back. I'm very happy because I recently, one of my favorite bird songs is a very kind of creepy and haunting melody that sounds. Actually, sorry, if you can picture in your head the, like if you can play back the sound in your head of the, inside the deco tree, it has that kind of haunting sound where it's like, it kind of drifts up and down through the harmonic series of the notes. There's a bird that sings like that. It sounds way sped up and way higher pitched, but it basically, like, I think it has a resonant cavity in its throat, or its I don't know what the term for the voice box is. But basically, it like constricts it and expands it, and goes through the harmonic series, kind of like throat singing, and it produces this really cool and really creepy sound. And I finally figured out what bird it is. And I'm not going to say it because I don't want to dox myself based on its range. You know, let me look up its range. Let's see if it's vague enough. But I'm really happy. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's fine. It's a wood thrush. Wood thrush. Apparently, they're all over the place. So I didn't reveal anything. Not that anybody's. I don't think anybody in this community would care anyway. But ever since I heard about some of the doxing stuff that happened in the Naruto community previously, I'm like a little wary about that. Anyway, hello. How are you doing? How are you feeling? How goes the recovery? Let's see. I think I'm gonna get started pretty soon here. I don't think this will be a super long stream. We're just gonna be wrapping up. So let me do a little intro. For folks who are new to the stream, welcome. Thank you so much for checking us out, and for returning folks, welcome back. Really appreciate you following through and continuing with us on what will be, I think, the last of a series in videos responding to Matthewmatosis's critique of Dark Souls 2. Just as a brief recap, the reason I wanted to respond to this in particular was because, you know, as you guys remember, we did Dark Souls 2 playthrough recently. It was a lot of fun. And the focus of the playthrough, in addition to just kind of exploring the game and analyzing it and studying it, was to try to understand where some of the modern criticism of the game is coming from, and to try to see if we could address some of the perspectives levied by folks like Mahler and, what's his name, Feeble King, folks like that who have kind of in the past few years, especially in the case of Feeble King, been part of a resurgence in anti-Dark Souls 2 sentiment, so to speak. But a lot of it kind of overlaps with some of the foundational original critique that Matthewmatosis provided now going on 11 years ago. So I thought it'd be valuable for us to go back and listen to that original critique in context, you know, talk about what holds up today, what maybe doesn't, talk about what might be echoed in more contemporaneous critiques, and what people might have decided to kind of move on from, so to speak. I myself am a game developer. I've been in the games industry for quite a few years. I worked on indie projects and on larger projects, and I'm a huge follower and fan of the From Software games. So part of where I'm coming from with these critiques or these responses is I want to not just be like, I want to mention if I agree or disagree with Matthew from the perspective of a gamer, but also I want to try to provide some insight into, essentially, he's pointing out problems and mistakes with the game, and I want to try to speculate as to, you know, as a developer, are those problems and mistakes that I might have come across or made in my own games? And if so, how did myself or how did the teams that I was working with at the time address those problems? Why are certain things the way they are? How do game developers try to navigate around these quandaries and communicate with their players despite them? What counts as a valid criticism, and what might be a little too harsh or a little bit too representing a too myopic view of game development in and of itself? So I wanted to try to to look at all those things together. So today we're going to be wrapping up our response to Matthew's critique. Interestingly, it looks like we're actually going to get to one of the spicier parts of the review. And I think we'll be able to wrap it up this time. We'll kind of see how it goes. Let's just pick it up from where we left off last time, 3640 mark. Of course, as always, I am responding to somebody else's work. It's important to view that work in context. Please go and watch this video if you haven't. It's on Matthewmatosis' channel, of course, just called Dark Souls 2 Critique. It makes, I would highly encourage anybody to always listen to like reacted content in the original context to make sure that you're getting it like unfiltered, unmodified, right? It's very important to do so. Yeah, and with that being said, we'll get started in just a second here. Sorry, says, I'm well, by the way, my recovery is going as expected, I think. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad, at the end of the day, if you're not getting any bad news, if everything is stable, as much as it might be a pain in the ass, that's a decent, that's decent in and of itself, right? That must be reassuring at least a little bit. And the XP keeps climbing too, so. The whole system is just absolutely baffling to me. I have no idea what's going on. But yeah, I noticed that the chat overlay is kind of funky with the XP thing now, so I will try to resolve that by this weekend. I was going to today, but had some issues come up, so I didn't get to it, unfortunately. But anyway, it is on my list of things to do, in addition to finding, it's just like formatting things a bit better. But yeah, we'll see. Okay, let's go.
Compared to their targets, and changing their character tendency with every kill, which pushed them more towards being a glass cannon. This covenant was almost a great idea though. The mistake was allowing players to directly attack the people they pull into their domain.
Yeah, so we talked about this just as a brief recap. Last time we discussed the covenant system, and specifically we talked about the Rat King covenant and how it makes it's a very, very interesting and intriguing idea, but maybe it's one that's executed a little bit clunkily, and I don't disagree with that. I think he does make a good point. I don't know that the solution he's proposing would necessarily work, because I think once you take agency away from the player, it fundamentally changes the way that the game feels. I mean, it would be the only time where your control over the player, as far as I can recall, is altered, other than like turning into a like a statue or a mimic or something like that. So I'm sorry, like when you use a white branch or a chameleon spell. So there might be a way to do it, but I think it's probably more like counterintuitively like a lot harder to actually implement than it might seem, because then it might have like some of those knock-on effects, like, oh, well, why does the control scheme change so drastically for this one instance, but then never again in the game? It like tangibly makes this particular thing feel more special or feel more removed from the rest of the game's levels, and that's something that you want to use very carefully if you decide to go that way. But it's possible it could work. I just I would anticipate that if you were to like pitch that in a meeting at a game development company, people would be like very skeptical. Not to shoot it down outright, but just to be like, okay, we need a plan to actually make this work, right? It's not quite as easy as you might think.
Instead, the Grave of Saints and Doors of Pharaohs should have been loaded up with more interesting traps, and the rat should have had to kill the victim by triggering the traps intelligently. This would have made the Covenant 10 times more interesting and fair.
Yeah, I think, why not make it, like, give it a higher emphasis on traps? The whole area is supposed to be basically like this Legends of the Hidden Temple, or like, more to the point, your own sort of home-brewed Sen's Fortress. So I agree with leaning in the direction of trying to make it more of a gauntlet that enemies have to go through, and maybe you could be like the final boss at the end, right? Like you're watching them kind of come up through the fortress, and you have to run around triggering pressure plates and stuff like that. And then if the enemy can get to the top, they fight you as like a boss fight or something like that. That'd be really cool.
Fairness is something which is lacking a bit in Dark Souls 2 compared to previous installments. On the whole, it plays like the other two games, but there's less care taken to ensure each death is the fault of the player. For example, there's no way to know this door in Huntsman's Copse will get you attacked if you try to open it. There's no way to know this...
Okay, sorry, I spaced out a little. I want to go back and make sure I listen to that carefully.
To ensure each death is the fault of the player. For example, there's no way to know this door in Huntsman's Copse will get you attacked if you try to open it.
Okay, so... Here's the thing. We talked about this pretty extensively when we played through this section, but if you guys recall, what I found when playing through here is that yes, this is a bit of an ambush and it's a little bit unfair, I suppose. However, as you're coming through this section, you're in a level where you are constantly surrounded by and beset upon by enemies who are ambushing you, right? And so you should already kind of be primed and kind of be expecting enemies to burst out at you from various locations. It's sort of unfortunate that in this
For
footage,
example, there's no way to
Matthew
know
kind of like approaches the door
this
and
door
then
in
turns
Huntsman's
around,
Copse
right?
will get you attacked if you
Like,
try.
and I forget exactly how it is if you like directly approach the door. I think, or sorry, if you actually fob the door to start to open it, I think the same result happens. But granted that we played on Scholar of the First Sin and not the base game, so it might be different. But what I recall about this is that it felt pretty fair when you actually played through it. And even if you did die, and even if you did like get a chunk of your health taken off, there's a bonfire like right nearby. It's only about a 30-second sprint back from the bonfire, and maybe it's a slightly unfair lesson if you want to adopt that approach. I guess I wouldn't say that that's like crazy or anything, but after that unfair lesson, what you learn is that, like, hey, even stuff like enemies might be hiding behind doors and destructible objects, enemies might be hiding behind corners. There are more unconventional ambush points you now need to be aware of. So it's a harsh lesson, but it's still a fair lesson because once you only have to learn it once, and then you can like very easily recover. And then after that, you can also like it changes the way, if you're paying attention, that you flow through the rest of the level, because now you're looking for ambushes more acutely. You're more on your guard. So I think this is pretty fair. It also, you know, kind of subtly hints that boards, like pieces of wood, planks, might be breakable, because I don't think up until this point in the game, it's possible in the Forest of Fallen Giants there might have been a couple of, yeah, there's like that one door that's like rotted wood that you can actually break, but the game never gives you a tutorial on that as far as I can recall. So, one second. This is the first time that the game, I think, very overtly teaches you that you can break through wood, and it's done in full view of another set of breakable wooden objects that you can then destroy. And this is, of course, I forget, this is not on the way to Seldora, but there are other like breakable wooden objects around at this point in the game if you go on one of the other branches as well. So my feeling here is that they really were trying to pack a lot of lessons into this one moment, namely that enemies can be ambushing you in unconventional ways, so be prepared. That things that you might have previously regarded as static, like doors, might actually be breakable, so be aware of that. And then also, things that are breakable that are made of a certain material, you should look for other things that are made of that same material, because they might also be breakable too, and they might have like benefits for you doing so. So is it possible that the first time a player gets ambushed behind this door that it's unfair and it's unreasonable? Perhaps, I suppose. I didn't personally feel that way when I played through it, but I could definitely see that argument. I don't think it's like crazy or anything, like I said. But I also think that the game is trying to impart several lessons at once, and it's doing a pretty damn good job of teaching you that with a harsh lesson, without resorting to just putting a flash up tutorial on the screen, right? It's still maintaining, it's still being faithful to FromSoftware's overall like instructional game design philosophy or whatnot. So I don't blame anyone for disliking this moment. I do like it, and I respect kind of what they were going for, even if the implementation was a little clunky, which is kind of, you know, an ongoing theme in these reviews, isn't it?
To open it. There's no way to know this beam in the well will break if you land on it, especially unexpected, since landing safely on stuff like this was possible in Demon Souls.
Okay, so this I find this a little weird. I suppose you could argue that if there was a particular language established all the way back in Demon Souls for things that are breakable versus unbreakable, and that was a language that was carried through to Dark Souls, you could say that, okay, at this point FromSoftware have taught their players that when they implement this sort of thing in this way, this is what to expect. I think there's a limited utility of expecting that sort of thing, though, because then you're putting the developer in a position where if they decide to deviate from that language, to iterate on it, to experiment with it, then it's going to automatically be counted as a bug or as a flaw or something like that, because of the mere fact that it's deviating from the established language. If what he's really saying, and I'm just misinterpreting it, is that there's no, I think what he is saying is that he doesn't feel that there's any clear indication that that particular plank of wood would break. To which I would respond by saying that it looks much more frail to me than the other one. Let's go back and take a look.
Open it. There's no way to...
Okay, one sec. Oh, Saria says, it's kind of like in River City Girls 2. There's a portion of the city, downtown I think, where there's parts of the ground that give out underneath you. It feels unfair, but it makes us learn to watch. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's totally fair to, I guess, like, have at least have a situation where the character is punished or shocked, or actually I shouldn't say punished. What should I say? Like startled or shocked by something that is a very dramatic, negative event, I guess, if you want to phrase it that way, as long as there's a way to quickly recover from it and they don't like arbitrarily lose a whole bunch of stuff unnecessarily. So for example, if you know, let's think about it. If you're going through Iron Keep, right, and the entirety of the keep, you walk over metal bridges, and the metal bridges are always safe, right? And they never like falter, or there's no indication that like the chains on them are rusty and they're about to fall, or they don't like swivel or anything like that. They're just solid. Or maybe the ladders would be a good example, right? Because you go through, like, use so many ladders in that part of the game. And then you're like 80% of the way through the level. You're nearing the final bonfire. You've accumulated a shitload of souls, and you get on a ladder, and then you're right near the top, and it breaks, and it breaks from the top, and you just fall down to the ground and you fucking die. There's no way for you to see that coming. There's no indication that that ladder might have been rusted or anything like that. It just randomly fucks you over, and you lose all those souls. That, I would say, would be total bullshit. The way I think you would go about implementing that is you would say, okay, do we want to just prank the player and like make him miserable, or do we want to teach them something about, like you're kind of describing there with the ground falling apart? Do we want to make either the ground breaking an active mechanic that we reuse and make a part of the gameplay experience, or do we want to create like an emotional state and a storytelling state for the player, and have the ground giving out as a part of that, right? Like, I forget what game it was. Maybe it was like The Suffering or something, where every once in a while, for no particular reason, the game would just like jump scare you with like a creepy image in the middle of the screen. And it was one of those things where it's like, as far as I know, maybe it was tied to the character's sanity meter, I don't remember. But to me at the time, it really just kind of felt like the game was fucking with you. It was a little annoying and obnoxious, but also they were trying to cultivate this experience of like your character losing their mind and the game constantly keeping you on edge. So even if you were in like a calm situation or whatever, in like a safe room, there was still an option that you as a player would be in some kind of fear state, even if your character was diegetically safe, right? So there's a reason for it. There's a purpose. And going back to our ladder example, I think the correct way to implement that would be to put it within the first 20% of the level's length, and then make the top of the ladder look really, really rusty, and then give you like a few seconds where you hear it creaking and groaning, and you have an opportunity to like run away. And I think what we found with that, the enemy behind the door, is that if you listen closely, you could hear as it like made a groaning sound. It was starting to approach you. So you have to give the player either an opportunity to very quickly learn, recover, or succeed, or you have to justify the punishment with some kind of narrative or emotional reason. I think Matthew and other players who feel like they can consistently feel like Dark Souls 2 is just punking them by not giving them an opportunity to respond to that. And it's tricky because as somebody who loves the game, but also somebody who knows the game very well, Maybe that's arrogant of me to say, but I know it pretty well anyway. Um, I think that the instances of this stuff, these pranks or whatnot, are pretty fair, pretty consistently thought out, and they have like a narrative or gameplay purpose, right? Um, but and so there's a part of me that wants to be like, okay, well, you just can't see that because you weren't paying attention. You're stupid. You weren't looking correctly. Blah blah blah. Get good. Skill issue. There's like a little defensive part of me that maybe wants to say that, but at the end of the day, it's a developer's responsibility to try to make sure they're communicating those traps and those lessons effectively with the player. So on the one hand, like, I sympathize with both the developer and the player on the other hand, because the player wants to feel like they had a chance and weren't getting dicked over, but the developer also needs to be able to take risks and to try to find a way to communicate things subtly in a game world with like 10 million, 5 million, 1 million different people, 100,000 different people. Think about, like, literally, it's really kind of mind-blowing to think about anything that you as an individual human being have done that then even 1,000, let alone 1,000,000 people individually come and interact with. It's kind of mind-blowing, honestly. And think about all of the different, like, cultural differences and age differences and backgrounds and temperaments and learning styles and levels of attention and play styles and experience with video games. There's so many goddamn variables when it comes to user user experience that it's really hard to control for. So I don't know. I don't want to be dismissive and say, well, tough luck, this is just how games are made. I also don't want to be too harsh on the devs and be like, you guys just failed at this. I think there's a middle ground, not quite sure where it is. Tarja says, hey, that's not fair. You didn't tell me this was a game mechanic. Nanomachine, son. My sources, I made it the fuck up. God, that fight between, what is it, Senator Armstrong and Raiden, not only is it genuinely amazing game writing and an amazing boss fight, it oddly, like, I don't know if Kojima himself actually wrote the script there, if he was just a producer, but either way, it's in line with Kojima games having a tendency to kind of, like, bizarrely, creepily predict the future. Like, he, a friend of mine I think he sent me this video on, like, how Kojima basically predicted the advent of AI and useless garbage data, and then in the age of the internet. Sorry, I'm kind of butchering this, but then, like, how we would need to create artificial intelligence for ourselves to help sift through the endless, useless sea of bullshit data that we created, and then we would eventually delegate more and more power and authority to the artificial intelligences that we created because we were incapable of maintaining our own creations. And that was a big part of the plot of Dark Souls, of Metal Gear Solid 2, and that's what's fucking happening today. With I don't know if you guys saw the I don't know if I could say the name of it on YouTube without getting in trouble, but, like, Mecha Dictator, that Grok was apparently identifying itself as. So that's great. Everything's fine. Nothing's on fire. And then, the whole, like, I mean, Senator Armstrong is what Trump would be like if he had a spine and worked out and was cool at all. It's like it's what he thinks of himself, like, when he closes his eyes. Or you ever see that picture of, like, a little tiny kitten looking in the mirror, and then he sees a reflection of a lion? Well, Trump, when he looks in the mirror, he sees Senator Armstrong. He's never going to be that badass, of course, but the whole, like, manufacturing conflict and what is it, like, privatizing military interests and everything that that goes into that fight, turning himself into a walking weapon. It's like an incarnation. He's like an America elemental, basically. Anyway, even the "Make America Great Again" it's like creepily, eerily accurate. 1 second. Got a notification. Okay. Let's see. Sorry says, me visualizing the man I want to be, the mirror Scooby-Doo. Really, do you identify with that character in particular? He does seem to have like somebody was talking about this recently, about like, was it you that was talking about like Scooby-Doo being like an ancient Egyptian god or something like that in one of the lores, or was that Konakun in Sunday stream? Either way, I'm intrigued. But yeah, so going back to the thing over here, personally, I mean, like, look, everything here seems very ramshackle and shoddy, and I guess I would sort of intuitively not trust any of these platforms, but it's kind of hard to see because it's so dark. But this particular platform, it's literally just 2 logs kind of tied together, very ramshackle in the middle of the abyss here, and it's very clear to me personally that you shouldn't try to walk on this. It's way too like, if you could walk on this, I would consider it to be a bug, or I would think it was like a weird collision thing. If not a bug, it feels like it's gonna break. But that's subjective. Like, somebody could look at this and feel that it's sturdy, especially if you come from Demon Souls, like, and it's the case there. That's fair, I guess. What I would say is that if you die to this, you get set back like 10 seconds. Again, like, maybe it feels unfair, it's a little frustrating, but at the same time, there's a bonfire. This is in Majula, right? You don't lose anything if you try this. Really not hard to recover from. I guess if anything, I would just say that, like, unless this comes up again in the gutter, you know, this lesson should be something that's reincorporated later. I think they should use this as an opportunity to teach you that certain platforms are not stable and reliable. Let you fail in a safe environment where you can easily recover your souls and your go back from the bonfire and all that, and then be like, okay, so now that you understand this in a safe environment, just be aware that later on you're going to be tested on this, and there are going to be worse consequences if you're not paying attention. So practice this as many times as you want in this safe little box, and then you're going to be tested for real. I think that's what they were going for, but I can't really remember. There's definitely some floors that break away in the gutter, but I don't remember any platforms like this. They quite work like this, but or any like platforms that you would walk over and then they crumble, or beams that you would walk over and they crumble and you fall to the abyss and die. But we didn't get too deep into the gutter the last time we played through, so I might be misremembering. I don't know. Saria says, John, any character that is openly a coward and always survives should be relatable for all of us. Yes, that's fair. He is resourceful. He does have like very high endurance, I guess you could say. Sometimes it's good not to try and be a badass lol. And yeah, that was me. Okay. It's true. I think there's something to be said for, the guy who lives to fight another day. One of the most important parts of that statement is the whole lives part. While other folks are off playing the hero and getting eviscerated. No.
To know this beam in the well will break if you land on it, especially unexpected since landing safely on stuff like this was possible in Demon Souls. This door in Aldia's Keep has no indication it's about to kill you either. This moment would be incredibly cheap in any game, but it's especially disheartening to see it in a Souls game which used to be known for being punishing, but fair.
So again, like, this would be the sort of thing, I guess we could pull up the game and double check, but what I remember from, and this was the base game too, so maybe they changed it, but I remember from this area is that this is at the very end. Like, you can kind of see the fog gate over here, and yeah, this might be unfair. I might grant this, but I would also say that, like, there are other instances in this level where first of all, you see these big trolls, or the ogres, or whatever they are, cyclopses, multiple times previously in the level, and they break shit, they break through shit, they stomp shit. You see one, in fact, in order to proceed before this, you see one through like a little grate in the door, and you approach it, and I don't think you can even interact with the door. It's just like a solid metal door, and then he breaks through, and that's how you progress. So you should at least be on your guard and be aware that this can happen. I don't remember if it makes much of an audio cue. I will say you can you can stop the animation of yourself opening a door by pressing B and like rolling back. So I think the intended implementation was they give you an ogre in pure view and let you see it, and then as you approach it cautiously, it breaks through the door, and then you're like, oh shit, I should be on my guard. It might be the case that other doors can be broken through and I could be ambushed again later, and then give you the chance to listen for audio cues when you can't, like, because the first test, so to speak, was a sight test, and now they're taking away your sight, so it would have to be a sound test and then a reaction test to see if you can like perceive the audio stim and then like input a dodge command to get out of the way fast enough and save yourself. I think that was the intention. It seems like maybe they didn't really succeed with that. And if so, that's unfortunate. But I like what they were going for. I can understand Matthew's frustration, but I also think that, like, depending on how that audio cue sounds, if we go back and play it, I think there's an argument to be made that it was okay. You know what I mean?
The worst offender of all is probably the windmill in Earthen Peak, which needs to be burned down in order to clear the boss room of poison. I have no idea how anyone is supposed to discover this without being told to do it by reading notes left by other players. The part the character sets on fire is clearly made of metal, and the level design here makes no attempt whatsoever to get players to light their torch.
Okay, so I think I agree with this. I'm gonna play devil's advocate because why not? It's like, it's like my default state. But personally, I agree with him, and I think what they should have done is, back in Sinner's Rise, they have those like troughs or whatever filled with pitch that you can light, and they wind up causing the torches, or like they increase the lighting in the boss room, and it's a very like important and useful mechanic. So all they really needed to do was put like a little bit of black tar or pitch on the side of the windmill here as a little bit of a cue. Now, not everybody would get it, because not everybody would have interacted with that mechanic for the Lost Sinner, but enough people would have found even that tiny little clue a little bit easier to figure out, that it would spread more easily in the community, and I think that would have made more sense. And regardless of whether it was like through messages or through your own exploration that you found it, I think it would be it would just make more sense diegetically, right? Because I don't understand the logic of the metal itself conducting the heat, or conducting the flame. It can conduct heat just fine, but the flame like this doesn't really make much sense to me, unless there's some property of the metal I'm not aware of, but I'm really reaching. I don't think there is. If the windmill were entirely made of wood, if that whole, like, most of the gearwork inside is, no, it's metal. If this dowel, or whatever you would call it, this wood cylinder over here were actually wood and not metal, that would be fine. This could have been like perfect with just a tiny little hint, and unfortunately they didn't decide to go that way. Not sure why. That being said, the devil's advocate position is that there are things in a lot of games that people, certain types of games that people find very compelling and interesting, that no one is really expected to find on their own. Mild spoilers for Undertale, not Deltarune, Undertale. I think everybody probably knows this already, but just in case, when you start up the game, there is a parameter under the hood called the fun value, and I think it can have a random integer between 0 and 1,000 or 1 in 1,000, something like that. And depending on what that value is, you will have certain random events in the game that can happen, and on specific numbers. And so there is some important and interesting lore and some important and interesting secrets that no one player is ever going to experience. Even if you play the game through in its entirety 1,000 times, statistically speaking, you're probably not going to see every single event. I don't know, a math person could maybe challenge me on that. There might be a way to do it, but I don't think it's very likely. And as a result, I'm kind of assuming that the intention from the developer was that people in the community would piece it together bit by bit by just like each of them kind of cobbling together a little bit of lore and then combining all that at the end. So I wonder if the intention here was like the developers would just think, okay, sooner or later somebody is going to walk around with a torch, and that person is going to happen to walk up this little cliff, a little ramp over here, and light the windmill, and then that one person is going to leave a message, and then that person is going to leave a message, and it's just going to spread like the fire itself as a little metaphor. And they deliberately decided to leave it very vague because they were just waiting for those few people to come to like find this incredibly obscure thing and then to see how it would spread to the community. If that was the case, I think that's really, really cool. I still don't think the idea was perfectly implemented because, you know, it's metal and fire and all that, but I really like the idea, if that's the case. Oh, hey, how's it going? Anna Will Blum, am I pronouncing your name correctly? Thank you so much for checking out the stream. I love, is that a, it looks like a Kirby snorkeling profile picture? I'm actually wearing a Kirby t-shirt right now. I love Kirby. It's really cool. So, Anna Will says, hi, hello. There is an NPC that you can summon who will point at the windmill, but it's hard to figure out. Oh, yeah, that's right. So the game does actually give you a little clue, but it's not, the NPC doesn't run up and actually set it on fire, right? You have to try and figure that part out yourself. That makes sense. So at least they're at least they're gluing you in a little bit. But I think it's interesting. I kind of sympathize with where Matthew's coming from. I also am trying to see things from the developer's perspective, and I think there's like a happy medium potentially.
I suppose the saving grace
Yeah, but thank you for reminding me of that. I totally forgot about that.
here is that it's still possible to beat the boss.
Zarya says, I love your Aviana. Yes, exactly. It's delightful. Kirby's just so joyous.
Get players to light their torch. I suppose the saving grace here is that it's still possible to beat the boss even with the poison, but the point is none of it makes any sense. Nobody reasonably expects a giant spider to shoot an enormous and incredibly damaging laser beam. It's simple to dodge once you know about it, but it can easily catch you off guard the first time because it's so nonsensical.
Okay, so this is an interesting claim or point here. 1 second. The idea is, I think his two objections are, the first one being that nobody expects the laser beam. It's kind of a surprise. And then also, like as a subset of that, nobody expects it because it's so nonsensical. And both of those are sort of interesting to examine, I think. The first part, I don't really think is a fair, like, criticism of the game, because there are all kinds of crazy things that bosses do in games that are, especially in the Souls games, that will take you by surprise, whether that's like having a lunging attack and a grab attack that you might not expect, or having a second phase, or launching some, like, I don't think anybody expected Rolana's Twin Moons, like, the first time they played through, or like any of the stuff that, you know, Mikola does, you know, in Shadow of the Erdtree or whatnot. And if everything that a boss does is like clearly telegraphed or clearly, you know, very obvious, I think that takes a certain amount of fun away from it. I think probably one of the coolest things the boss does do is fire this massive laser beam, and the fact that you get surprised by it, get taken off guard by it, is a good thing. What I would say is that you still ought to give your players an opportunity to suspect that something is about to happen, right? You don't need to telegraph it so overtly by having the spider like charge up a massive energy blast, or like a you know, like a Kamehameha or something like that, where there's like a particle effect attached to the enemy's head and there's a glowing, intensifying light source or something like that. You don't have to do something that overt with it, but you need to give them a chance to at least be like, okay, hang on, something's wrong. I gotta go hide. Like, I gotta move away from it because I know it's about to do something. I don't know what yet, but I know it's gonna be bad. But the thing is, in this boss fight, usually, if I recall correctly, Freya will start to aim her head towards the right and then charge up the blast and then fire it very, very slowly, going from the right, tracking all the way to the left. And compare that to what like Midir does in Dark Souls 3, Midir is like this taken to an extreme, right? I can never track what the hell he's doing with his laser beam, and it's a one-shot kill for the most part, unless you have extremely high vigor. And it feels like it's just kind of flailing around and kind of arcing wildly all over the place. This one, by comparison, is much more tame. And after the first, maybe you get hit by it once or twice before you realize what's going on. But if you just like watch her head and look at her rearing up and like preparing, you'll notice that she's kind of looking in the opposite direction and then slowly sweeping. I think that's pretty easy to be suspicious of, and I think it's also pretty easy to dodge. You just have to like roll under it. Unless I don't remember for sure actually if you get iframes with the beam itself, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to me to be all that unfair. I personally find the armor spider in Demon Souls to be much like jankier. I wonder if he'll bring that up in a second. Oh, yeah, he does, I think. Okay, so let's listen to that in a sec. But let me check the chat here. Sorry, it says I am a sword. Why is that hard to say? I am a sword Kirby enjoyer. Though I guess that might be obvious given my name is Saria's opponent. Oh, fair, yeah. Well, that's it. That's one of the coolest things about Kirby as a character is his ability to incorporate all sorts of different abilities, right? I remember playing Kirby Superstar for the first time and just being like absolutely fascinated by all the different transformations and the ability to take things that were how can I say, enemy attacks that were specifically designed to hurt you now became part of your arsenal and things that you could use to have fun with and subvert that onto the enemies. It's such a cool mechanic. It's really, really cool. And an innovation too, right? Because the first Kirby game I played was the one on the Game Boy, and that you could suck things in and blow them out, but you couldn't. Sorry, but you couldn't actually like transform, right? It was just like inhalation and expectoration powers, and then flight. But you couldn't really like transform or absorb powers or whatever, right? Like copy them. Yeah. Anna Will says, yes, you say it correctly. Okay, great. I'm glad. You may say Anne if that is easier. And yes, it's Kirby. I love that little guy. I love Kirby too. He's so great. I was actually learning to play. One of my favorite songs is I think it's called Nightmare Warship Halberd from Superstar. And it's the one where Kirby is like lands on the deck of the halberd and is assaulting it. It's like this super fast-paced, jazzy type tune. I am trying to learn to play it on the guitar. Very, very challenging. But thankfully, I found a channel that the guy goes and takes like SNES cartridges, and he basically like extracts the MIDI, like he extracts the sounds from like each individual track from the from the cartridge for a song, and exports it as like an individual MIDI track, and then breaks it down so like you can just listen to like the quote unquote piano, or just listen to the drums or the horns or whatever. It makes it so much easier to learn the parts. So it's really, really cool. So it's probably gonna take me like a year to learn it because it's so intense. But it's been fun. It's a nice way to kind of like stay connected to the character after all this time. Sorry says, I don't think it's a fair criticism because it's like being angry in A Link to the Past because we see, BMO's debut. Yep. My first game was Wind Waker. I didn't expect BMO shooting lasers. I didn't know its name. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, Wind Waker does, wow, I should know this. Do you have a fairy in Wind Waker? Do you have a thing that, no, you don't have a fairy. You have the necklace that lets you talk to your sister, or to Tetra, or maybe to the King of Red Lions. I'm trying to remember if there's actually like a mechanic where if you are locked on with Z targeting, can you then press a button that gives you like a little description of what the enemy is? I think so, because I seem to remember that if you do that to the knights, that somebody tells you that you can use the claw shot on the knights to get a the charm pendant, like the butterfly pendant thing, right? But I don't remember. But I mean, like, yeah, that's a good thing, right? If they can give you, if players are finding that they're getting consistently surprised by enemies, then giving you an option to like scout ahead or to get like a little mini tutorial on them could be a very valuable resource, right? So that being said, I think Dark Souls, like part of the charm of Dark Souls, part of what really makes the series compelling is this sensation of being thrown into like a vast ancient world filled with things that are like borderline beyond your comprehension, that are beyond your power, that like the only reason that you're even succeeding at all is because countless heroes have tried before you and failed, and have gradually started to like weaken and whittle down the things that you are coming across. Like the kingdom itself is desiccated and it's crumbling apart, and you know, you would never stand a chance against any of these things in their prime, but you're gradually able to kind of scrape together a victory. And so, that being said, they're supposed to be like a little inscrutable. They're supposed to be a little mysterious and a little weird. And especially like a giant freaking spider. I don't think it's supposed to be like, can you imagine how fucking boring it would be if you came to fight this thing and it just stabbed you and bit you and nothing else? Like, it's really cool that it does the laser thing. Sorry says yes. Okay, good. So I'm like kind of on the right track. Yeah. Of course, my favorite is was it Tattle? Actually, I don't know if I prefer Tattle or Midna, but I do like the kind of like sassy Brad characters who just like reluctantly go along with you. But anyway, so I would say that, oh yeah, so the other thing is the idea that the spider is shooting a laser at you and you wouldn't expect a laser. Yeah, okay, so I disagree with this. Lasers are a sci-fi sort of thing, usually speaking, in games. And so I can understand why, if it is literally a laser, that it wouldn't really make sense for a spider like this to be firing it off. That makes sense. Visually, it does kind of look like a laser beam. I can appreciate that. However, there are quite a few spells in this game that are visually coded to look exactly like this. The sort of blue the blue glow around a white internal line is pretty consistent with spells like Soul Stream and Soul Vortex, and even like the Heavy Soul Arrow and stuff like that. And I forget specifically. Actually, let me take a look. Soul of the Duke Freya. Okay, let's see what we get from her soul. Spider Fang or Spider Silk. Okay, I thought we got a spell, but you know, Spider Fang, Duke himself, enhanced with spiders. Take on a form that was far from human. Okay, so for whatever reason, I thought you got a spell. The arena that you're in is right next to a dragon who seems to have like either been imprisoned or tangled up, or like yielded its soul, or so. It's not clear to me exactly what's happening there. But it's later kind of revealed that that's probably used to be Seath's soul, Seath the Scaleless from part 1, from Dark Souls 1. And you know, Seath is obviously somebody who is deeply steeped in sorcery and magic. So I don't know, maybe I just had a different experience than Matthew did, but I always kind of intuitively felt like this all made sense, right? You're in an area where magic is like kind of a big deal, and it is visually connected to the sort of magical language that we fucking visual language that we see established for some of the other spells in the game. This to me just seems like a hyper powerful Soul Vortex style spell. It doesn't seem out of the ordinary at all. It doesn't feel like a laser to me. It feels like a magical jet, essentially. And this is just sort of coincidental that I happen to have been watching like nature documentaries on spiders recently. Don't ask me why. It just happened to happen in my life. That they are capable of, like, maybe not out of their mouth holes, but like they have organs and such that they are capable of using to spew like strands of stuff large distances. I forget what the name of the spider was, but there was a documentary I was watching with a spider that was able to spit strands of silk like across a river and basically connect to a tree on the opposite bank of the river, and then hang over the river and catch like flies that tend to hover over the river's surface. The spiders are really incredible. They're very resourceful. They're capable of performing some genuinely amazing feats. So, this didn't seem weird to me. It is okay if it seems weird to you, the collective you, if you are watching this or if you just played the game and this is like too bizarre for you. It's too past your limits. Okay, that's subjective. That's allowed. But I don't agree with Matthew's perspective here because I think the developers went far, like put enough effort into it, making this feel like it's part of the overall like vision of the game. It doesn't feel out of place. Let me check on chat real quick. Anna Will says, Zelda lovers as well. I feel at home here. I'm really glad I clicked on the stream. Yeah, thank you so much for checking it out. I really appreciate it. And yeah, you'll find that this is a really chill environment. Saria in particular brings a lot of like positive vibes, but I mean everybody does who stops by here. The Sunday streams where we're talking about Naruto get like slightly spicier because sometimes we'll be talking about like reviews and debates and arguments and stuff like that. And for the most part, the Dark Souls stuff has been really chill. And if you have any other like topics or anything you're interested in, like I always have a specific thing that I come in mind to talk about. But I'm always happy to like if you want to talk about Dark Souls 3 for a while, or like we talked a little bit about Clair Obscur or about what's it called? Outer Wilds, like here and there, you know. It's a free-form hangout discussion. Just this is the video itself is just sort of a catalyst to give us something to to talk about. But yeah, thank you again for coming on by. Sorry, it says I think I'm typically the only girl here, so I'm glad you feel at home. Yeah, that's important too. It is a little bit skewed gender-wise, for whatever reason. Well, I guess it's not super surprising. Like, hey, come listen to me. A video game development dude complain about other people's, like, other video game dudes' opinions on video games. Like, yeah, I can understand maybe why that skews one way or the other, but yeah, I appreciate it either way. Sorry, it says spiders you give yourselves nightmares for free. Yes, I love spiders. They don't give me nightmares. I'm sorry if you're arachnophobic. This probably like the worst possible frame for me to stop on. I'm sorry. But yeah, I love spiders. I don't necessarily want them like biting me, which they sometimes do. It's unfortunate. But I don't squish them, or I don't like carry them outside when I find them in my house, because they always just help with the pests and stuff. So I had a little I don't know how intelligent they really are, but I had like a little jumping spider that would hang out on my desk. She liked to kind of nest behind my speaker for some reason, but I think it was kind of curious because she would kind of like come out every once in a while, just kind of like hang out on my keyboard and like watch me do stuff. And be like, okay, you can chill, just don't bite me. Yeah, I love spiders. It's true. Sorry. Annabelle says, I know the feeling. Yeah, sure. I don't expect anybody else to join me on this, but yeah, I do really like them. They're just fascinating. Annabelle says, oh, all good games. Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm actually really looking forward to starting on Clair Obscur. I'm going to start like a casual playthrough probably next week. I've really been looking forward to it. Sorry, I kind of introduced me to it, and then I just keep hearing people say it's a masterpiece, so I'm really looking forward to also just kind of playing a game for fun on stream with y'all, because for the most part, I have been like analyzing things, so to speak, if I can sound a little pretentious, as opposed to just like playing. Even the Dark Souls 2 playthrough was very like analytical. So I'm looking forward to just kind of a more chill, experiencing the masterpiece firsthand, so to speak. Oh, I'm just gonna say, hey Kavak, good to see you. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you're doing okay tonight. Yeah, no worries about the breathing video. I hope it winds up being helpful. I've actually started doing it myself. I'm trying to get back into like metal vocals very slowly, of course. I started playing some like metal stuff in the car the other day, and I went a little crazy with it, and I blew out my voice. So it's like, yeah, maybe I should practice what I preach here. But yeah, go check it out. Let me know what you think. Hopefully it's helpful. To answer your question, Anna Will, yes, I am absolutely 100% a Dark Souls 2 enjoyer. No shade or anything. If you, well, let me just ask, are you also a Dark Souls 2 enjoyer? If not, no problem. I understand people have different and sometimes very strong opinions about the game. I personally really like it. I think its atmosphere and its world building are great. I think its artistry is great. I think overall it's just its story is really intriguing. Its characters are really interesting. I do think that technically speaking, it has its limitations. It's a little bit clunky, a little bit buggy. I think they basically bit off more than they could chew, and they shot like they really stretched and tried to accomplish a lot, and then didn't quite succeed with everything that they maybe hoped to, for whatever reason. But overall, I think it's a brilliant game. Yeah, I really do enjoy it a lot. Let's see. Yeah, I just keep seeing that you love spiders. Yes, spiders are great. And bonjour, Kabak. Thank you so much for stopping by again. um, you asked me something recently that I am forgetting. I'm sorry. I think you asked me something and maybe I didn't follow up. I'm misremembering. If I forgot something, please let me know. Sorry, this past week has been kind of crazy. So feel free to let me know if I forgot something. It might have just been the breathing video, but I thought you asked me something about Dark Souls that I forgot to follow up on. Either way, let me know, and I'm happy to follow up with you afterwards. Let's see. Breathing. Oh, yes. So last time, I think it was last time, might have been the week before. Oh, yeah. Now I am seeing your other comment. Saria asks, oh, never mind. I thought it was just literally breathing, just like how horror guys breathe into phones. I was like, why are you watching a breathing video? Well, no, just like a person inhales and exhales normally for 4 hours ASMR. Normal functioning human being respirates ASMR. Um, I'm sure that's a thing. I'm positive that exists. But no, it was, I think it was something like that, right? We weren't talking about metal specifically. We were talking about breathing exercises or something like that. I might have made some comment, like sometimes you might hear my voice, like kind of catch when I'm breathing in. And I think we did talk about like just, this one exercise I used to do for metal vocals where you like inhale. I'm going to try and do it here. Like you inhale until your chest is like mostly full, and then you take little sips. I don't know if that's coming across on the microphone, but basically, like, you take a little sip of extra air in, and then you hold it for a couple seconds. Not to the point where you feel any pain. Like, if you feel any pain, stop immediately. But just so you feel like a tiny bit of a stretch, and you hold it there, and that helps to kind of expand and open up your diaphragm. And really, you know, when you're doing, like, metal vocals, like the harsh kind of growly stuff, you should be singing through, like, using your diaphragm as the source of power and pressure. If you just like try and like go like kind of stretch your throat like that, you're gonna blow out your throat. It's not gonna feel very good. There are definitely like throat based techniques, that are better than that are useful and that are like very cool sounding. But for the like deeper powerful stuff, it really does kind of come from your upper chest, and that is a lesson that I both learned the hard way and also constantly forget. And so we were talking about like a video where a guy goes through a bunch of different breathing exercises, and it makes a huge difference. Like within a month, like 2 or 4 weeks or so of me doing those when I used to practice more regularly, I was like, oh, okay, this is like actually helping me more than just trying to hit the notes or whatever, because it's just like changing my posture. It's changing the way that I inhale. We think of inhaling as just being this thing that happens automatically and naturally, and it is, but it can also be a skill, like just like walking. Like you can get better at it. You can do it in a way that feels more comfortable and more natural. So that's kind of why I brought it up, and hopefully some of that is helpful. Annabelle says, Dark Souls 2 is my favorite. That is awesome to hear. If you would like to share, I would love to hear more about what you like about it.
The dodge once you know about it, but it can easily catch you off guard the first time because it's so nonsensical. Compare this with the armored spider in Demon Souls, which can breathe fire. The level is a fiery mine, so you're probably expecting something fire-based. The tunnel leading into the fight forces you to be wary of projectile attacks, and the flame breath attack has a long lead-in with an obvious particle effect to signal danger.
I think I agree with the overall idea that, you know, the flame is more like thematically appropriate than the like soul burst, because I know I said before that the there's a lot of magic that kind of went into Seldora, and it is a part of it, but apart from those like weird hunched over necromancer caster guys, there aren't technically a lot of like sorcerers in that area. I think it's fair to say that Amana, the Shrine of Amana, is an area kind of characterized or defined by sorcery. There's also a lot of there's at least one major sorcerer invader as well. And then there's stuff that is magical, even if it's not sorceress, like the bright bugs that are flying over those like lurker enemies in the water or whatever. So yeah, I think you could make an argument that people would be more likely to expect a long-ranged, powerful magical burst attack, regardless of whether it looks like a laser, if they were expecting that it was like a magical level, and then the boss of the magical level would also have magic, if that makes sense. This is a fiery level, so the boss of the level also has fire. That kind of makes sense. Although it can also be interesting to subvert that expectation. It's a very safe and very like totally fine way to code your boss. Not coding in terms of like programming, like coding in terms of visual theming and whatever. As for this particular boss, like I suppose I think it's a little non sequitur to say like being in a tunnel forces you to be aware of projectiles, but I guess so. It feels pretty similar, honestly. Like if anything, being put into this tunnel funnel over here means that you have less opportunity to react. Like you have less of an opportunity to like try to sprint away from the incoming projectile, right? You're inclined to sprint towards the enemy and to consume your stamina in doing so. So I feel like this actually puts more pressure on you because you're trying to like quickly advance towards the spider while also like dealing with these very quick, very pointed projectiles like missiles. Whereas with Freya, her lead up is a little bit more subtle, but the overall attack itself is much more slow. Especially it gets effectively slower the closer you are to her, right? Because if you're like right up here, you only have to move a few feet as the beam tracks. If you're back here, then yeah, okay, it's obviously covering more ground like further away from the point of origin. But I don't know, I always felt like this particular boss fight was putting way more pressure on me. Saria says, I just do it, just like how I just do breathing. Toby Spider-Man explaining how he uses webs to Tom and Andrew Spider-Man. Yeah, exactly. How do you manage to stay, what's the word for it, alive? Well, I inhale, and then at a certain point in the future, what's the word for it? I forget what you call it, but I have to let the air out that I put the air into me, and now it has to go out of me. But then I have to bring it back in after that, and it's like a whole thing. You get used to it after a while. Almost like second nature. Sorry, I kind of just assume anything can happen in a fantasy setting, because honestly, anything can happen in a fantasy setting. Yeah, exactly. So when I see robots, lasers, time travel, space-time distortions, I'm like, yeah. If you don't mind me editorializing for a second, although I guess hopefully you don't, because that's the whole stream. When people... Okay, so... Feeble King is somebody who's done Dark Souls 2 content that I will react to as well. I very strongly disagree with his perspective on a lot of things, but in particular, probably the worst take of his that I've heard is he was upset that characters in Dragon Age, what is the new one that came out, Vanguard, that there was a trans character or non-binary character, non-binary character who came out to their parents, and that there was a coming out scene in that game. And I'm sure there was a lot more to it than that, but the reason why he apparently was upset is because in fantasy games, people are trying to survive the apocalypse, and when you're trying to survive the apocalypse, you don't have time to think about frivolous things like gender or whatever. And also, like, fantasy worlds wouldn't have real modern world politics. So this is just a corruption of the fantasy genre by people with their modern politics putting it where they don't belong. And basically, like, you can't have modern politics in a fantasy world, and people can't care about their gender if the world is falling apart. And I think bro forgot about the word fantasy in the title, and the fact that it's like, you know, you can make whatever worlds you want, and you can use it as like to suggest that fantasy and sci-fi categorically are places where like politics are off limits is just an extreme level of disconnect from like those genres. Sure, there are fantasy stories that are literally just like, be the shiny dude with the sword and kill the stinky dude with the rusty sword who wants to break down your city. There are plenty of stories just like that, and I enjoy some of those as well. But also the idea that like there is only one specific way to do fantasy, and that fantasy can't involve whatever bespoke rules you want for your own fantasy universe is really, really weird. And that it has to, yeah, I'm kind of like seeing your comment there, sorry, that it has to be an apocalyptic setting or whatever else, and also that people in an apocalypse wouldn't care about like their identity. Why wouldn't people, feel if they're running out of time like they would want to live as their most authentic and true self, and feel like they can do that before, like, if the world is ending anyway, like, why would you hide? Why would you like fit some kind of conformist norm that's like repressing you or something, right? Like, just very, very incurious and weird. Granted, it's not his fault. This is just some like manosphere nonsense that's been kind of circulating for a while now. But it's it's fantasy. You can do whatever the fuck you want with your fantasy universe, man. So it's just like to kind of like go back to your point, Saria. Yeah. I guess if you, what was the game I was playing recently that was like a fantasy game? Oh yeah. So spoilers for Drakengard 3. You should play Drakengard 3 if you're interested in the near games at all. It's really good. I like it. So spoilers for the end of Drakengard 3 will be done in the next 90 seconds. 3, 2, 1. So Drakengard 3 takes place in an entirely medieval setting. However, at the very end, if you play through the multiple branches, then you will come across characters who jump between different timelines and who are like literally android robots from the future who are studying branching timelines and timeline collapses and singularities and stuff like that. They use the term singularity to refer to like a person who is like I think like a person of significance as opposed to like a black hole singularity. But at any rate, yeah, so like the sci-fi stuff crosses into the fantasy stuff, and personally I was like, I kind of wish the fantasy stuff would just stay fantasy. I don't really want these two realms colliding. I like my my spaceships and my lasers over here, and I like my dragons and my castles over there, but hey, that's my preference. It doesn't mean that the game is flawed or broken or the developers suck because they decided to go that way. And frankly, like Yoko Taro being such a mad genius, I would kind of be disappointed if he wasn't doing crazy stuff like that to begin with. So, okay, 3, 2, 1, Drakengard 3 spoilers are now over. Finally getting to your comment, Annabelle. I love the stories, the lore, and the whole atmosphere of the game. I do too. They're wonderful. And the vague parts in it, I like to explore a lot. Oh, sorry. And the vague parts in it, I like to explore a lot, so I figured out much on my own. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about the Soul series, honestly. It's just like feeling the atmosphere and the vibe, I guess, of the place, and kind of like soaking it in and gradually like he's developing a feeling for it, and then having those sort of vague feelings over time kind of crystallize as you learn little bit by little bit what the story is, what the lore is, like everything that's been happening in this place. Like I usually fall in love with a place, like Majula, and then feel like mystified by it, and then the rest of the game me trying to like just better understand it gradually. Yeah. Game also doesn't force you to ingest all of its narrative in specific chunks. Obviously there are exposition dumps, there are cutscenes, but for the most part it kind of like invites you to take it all in and then decide at your pace what you want to engage with, how much you want to dive into it. Really cool, actually really, really bold and really risky game design, especially for Dark Souls 1 and Demon Souls when they first came out. Let's see. And Anna Will says, and I love the builds you can do, which you cannot really do in other DS games. That's true. There is a lot of interesting, creative, and flexible items in Dark Souls 2, and some interesting stuff like the butterfly or the poison moth set, and like the jester set, and the fuzzy cat legs and stuff like that you don't really quite see the same level of whimsy with a lot of the stuff in Dark Souls 3. I think the pig shield might show up in 3, I forget, but it's a bit more serious in tone, a little less whimsical, I guess. Kavak is back. Hey, Kavak, welcome back. How was the video? Was it useful at all? Hopefully it helps a bit. Saria says, fantasy doesn't always have to be an apocalypse. Fantasy absolutely does deal with modern politics. Mistborn, anyone, Storm of Archives. Like, these things aren't mutually exclusive. Yes, exactly. I mean, Star Trek, most of the Star Trek I've seen has basically been like, we are now in a time where, for the most part, things are way better than they used to be in like our time currently outside watching the show. And sometimes some of those old problems come back and it's like, wow, what the fuck? I thought we solved this. Isn't this ridiculous? And then sometimes we discover brand new things and we're like, wow, thank God we're no longer worrying about all of those trivial bullshit things that we used to fight over, so that now we can deal with these sorts of problems, right? I don't know. Obviously, that's not... It's kind of like saying cyberpunk has to be about fighting corporations or something, right? The cyberpunk genre doesn't have to be about that specifically. And also to suggest that, like, cyberpunk can't be like anti-capitalist or something, or cyberpunk can't like have some sort of social commentary. It's like, wait, what? What the fuck are you talking about? Anyway. Kavak says, I think it's best to ignore Feeble King. You might be right. His takes are so absurd that I assumed he was doing parody. He's a complete anomaly critic-wise. I would say he's a troll, but I think he honestly thinks that way. Yeah, so that's... I forget. One of his videos, I think I left maybe an overly crappy comment. I don't know. But I left a comment saying, if this is satire, it's actually brilliant. But if you actually believe this, you have some problems. Because the first video I saw of his was, it seemed like such a dead ass impersonation, like a dead on impersonation. Sorry, I haven't said that in a long time. A dead-on impersonation of people who hate on Dark Souls for quote unquote no real reason. Sorry, and so I thought, yeah, it was satire, but then I watched a few of his other videos and I'm like, if this is satire, he's like really committed to the bit. And I was reminded of people who say that Cinema Sins is satire, and I'm like, yeah, I know some of their sins are like they're playing a character, but I mean, they have to be really committed to that character. I don't know. I definitely see where you're coming from. Not sure how I feel about it in the long term. I think I'll watch one of his videos again. Probably won't go into the Dragon Age one for a few reasons. One, I just don't know the series as well. But two, I don't know that engaging with his perspective on that is going to go anywhere. I might do one of his Dark Souls 2 videos if I find one where I'm like, it is interesting to talk about these takes, right? If he makes some comment about like, I think that adaptability kind of sucks, and I hate the way that the parrying system works, like the iframes work. I don't really have all that much to say about that. But if he's like, I hate the way that the levels are connected to one another and they don't flow well, that's something maybe I could talk about. I hate the way that these characters are designed and these boss fights are designed, and that's something I could talk about. Kavak says, anyway, there's something I've been waiting to do, so I'm going to go do that. See ya. Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for stopping by. It's always good to see you. I'll see if I can find any other videos that might be helpful. I see your comment above there about that it's focused more on posture, but I want to get back into this stuff too, so I'll see if I can find anything and let you know. But either way, have a great night. Be safe. Have fun. Should I see? Sorry, it says Drakengard mentioned. Yep. You laughing at the dead ass thing? Yeah. Sorry, it says, if this is satire, this is perfect, but if you're serious, you have issues. Okay. Oh yeah, that's what you're referring to. Yeah, I mean, like, I didn't mean to be mean or anything, but I mean, it's true. Like, genuinely, I genuinely hope it is satire, because good satire is hard to do. It's hard to do well. Um, and I think he pulled it off, assuming that that's what it was. And if not, it's just like kind of sad, right? So, anyway. Anyway, let's continue.
And the flame breath attack has a long lead-in with an obvious particle effect to signal danger. Another comparison is the Tower Knight and the Last Giant, which are night and day compared to one another. For the Tower Knight, the arena is incredibly spacious, and players are lured up to deal with the archers first, giving them time and space to learn the Tower Knight's attacks before having to deal with him directly. For the Last Giant,
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Although it doesn't really help you deal with the Tower Knight's melee attacks. It's... Hang on. I want to... I was a little distracted. I want to go back and double check this.
incredibly space giant particle effect to signal danger.
Oh yeah, the particle effect to signal danger thing, I don't know. That attack is just like so fast, it comes at you so quickly. But okay.
Another comparison is the Tower Knight and the Last Giant, which are night and day compared to one another.
Night and day.
For the Tower Knight, the arena is incredibly spacious, and players are lured up to deal with the archers first, giving them time and space to learn the Tower Knight's attacks before having to deal with him directly. For the Last Giant...
Well, a couple of things there. Not to be that guy, but I think the Tower Knight is actually a lady, in the lore. It might be Phalanx. That's the lady. I'm not sure 100%, but I think it's Tower Knight that's implied to be female. So, just putting it out. That being said, I don't know about this, because like the attacks that the Tower Knight does that you're going to want to learn and be more concerned about are the melee attacks, because you're going to need to get into melee range to be able to defeat her. But you can't really deal with that while you're completely not like he's not facing the Tower Knight at all. He's not engaged with the Knight whatsoever. The Knight is just sort of off screen and will have, like periodically throw magical attacks at you, I believe, like magic spear attacks or something, or projectiles. But those aren't the attacks that you're going to really be worrying about when you're engaged in melee combat with her anyway. So I don't know. I don't really feel like the reason these enemies were put here is to give you time to study the Tower Knight. I feel like the real boss here is the arena itself, and that if you just run directly at the Knight, you're going to be swarmed by arrows coming at you, or bolts, I guess, coming at you from a variety of different directions. And so the win condition here isn't just sparring with dueling with the enemy. It's actually very quickly evaluating your tactical position and then finding the correct way to navigate the entire situation. Potentially, depending on your build, you might be able to launch ranged attacks from on top of the from like out of a porthole or something like that, or maybe like cast some spells from up here. I don't know if it's feasible to actually defeat the Tower Knight with ranged attacks at this point in the game. I always used melee, but it doesn't seem to be. Yeah, I don't think that those two things that he's mentioning are connected per se. They're just both things that happen in the arena.
Space to learn.
Oh, sorry, it says, nice melee attacks. Now check out this... Sorry. Now check this out, nerd! Said Gandalf calmly before nuking the battlefield. Yeah. Or is that like Dumbledore asked calmly, did you put your fucking name in the Goblet of Fire, Harry? Man, Gandalf has some, what is the cool thing people are saying these days? Some serious aura moments. You shall not pass is iconic. For real. I should stop talking. Text, okay. Yeah. Shit, sorry, did you ever play I don't even remember what the name of the game was. It was on the GameCube, and it was a Lord of the Rings game. It might have just been the Return of the King official game, where you could play as, or like the movie adaptation or whatever, you could play as various characters. One of them was Gandalf, and he was just like a walking like one-man army. Amazing swordsman. Had like a shield that could push enemies back. Like he literally nuked the battlefield with some of his like AoE attacks and stuff like that. And you'd just be trying to build up combos for days, like basically like he was Raiden from Metal Gear Rising. It's crazy. And got a lot of work done.
Learn the Tower Knight's attacks before having to deal with him directly. For the last giant, there's no such prep time. The arena is far more cramped, and his moveset consists of haphazard flailing, which can catch you the wrong way for seemingly no reason.
I mean, like, again, I don't like the whole well, I guess it's nice that he said seemingly no reason this time, but I don't really agree with that either. We're not seeing that on screen right now. We do see him like stomping. Those stomps are pretty well telegraphed. And yeah, maybe the first time those like long sweeping arm gestures might knock you off kilter or something, or like get you like catch you off guard is the phrase I'm looking for. But I mean, at the end of the day, this is a creature who has borderline been driven insane and has been imprisoned in an incredibly undignified, kind of humiliating way. Thematically and narratively, it makes sense for this character to be flailing around and kind of moving in a way that doesn't seem like natural or refined. It would be very, very weird for it to be moving and presenting itself in the same way as the Tower Knight does, just thematically, narratively, all that. I guess if you find his flailing attacks unfair or unbalanced or whatever, that's up to you. That's okay. But I never once felt that like it was moving in such an erratic way. Like the Guardian Ape from Sekiro. There's an attack that he does where he like flails all over the place. I'm trying to picture it in my head. He like rocks back and forth on his back, and he just like flails his arms around. It's like, for me anyway, it's impossible to ever tell what the hell he's doing or where the damage zones and the safe zones are. That's something that I would agree is like flailing around, but also that makes sense for that character. He's a wild, like enraged ape with a sword stuck in his fucking neck that you're trying, like, basically just like barely managing to keep up with. And the fact that it would have a flailing attack makes perfect sense. I don't think you would ever look at the ape flailing and be like, well, that's bad, right? You would just understand that that's part of what that enemy is supposed to do, plan ahead, and then be like, okay, I know that this is going to flail at some point, and so I'm going to make sure to read its motions and like play cautiously and just make sure to like create some space if I haven't seen it flail for a while. Like, so I guess there's a little bit of an air of incuriosity or lack of curiosity here. And I think there's room for more leniency, I guess, for lack of a better word. Sorry says, I have not, but I have played Hobbit, only the tutorial. Only the tutorial specifically. I guess you didn't quite fall in love with it then if you only got that far. It's a shame. I think it might have been somewhat similar. Oh wait, no, I'm thinking of something else. Yeah, it was a little bit more, more whimsical. He's flailing tactical nuke. It's tactical flailing. Yeah. It's like drunken boxing Lee from Naruto. The strategy.
The Tower Knight fight is about as challenging as the last giant, the only difference being you're less likely to suffer a cheap death the first time you face him. It's not just bosses which suffer from these kind of problems. The mace-wielding knights in the Dragonary are perhaps the worst enemies in the entire series, thanks to how stupidly unfair their moveset is. They seem to just reset their animations constantly without any kind of stamina. Even after dropping their mace on the ground, they have no recovery time before they're swinging all over the place again. Trivial for a magic-wielding character, but insanely unfair for melee characters since there's no safe time to attack them. This is...
I mean, like, okay, so we talked about this a little bit before. I forget where this came up, I think, when we were just playing through it. But let's just go through this one more time, and I want to turn the audio off for a second and just look at what the enemy does. And let's try this. Let's put playback speed down to 0.75. Just take our time and kind of step through it real quick. Okay. So, the enemy is at a distance from our player, brings its heavy mace up like this, okay, and in a pretty obvious way, brings it down for a very clear, so to me, this indicates that it's like rearing up and getting ready for a lunge, right, like a charging battering ram style attack, in which case, I personally, just my Souls-like reflexes would have me wait until about here, and then try to dodge into the attack, and then around and then attack from behind. Now maybe Matthew didn't think of that. That's okay. He doesn't. We don't need to like share share her brain cells or whatever. But now he has this big overhead sweep attack, and yet he does come down for a follow up. Matthew sort of walks to the side, and that's correct. And now he is potentially in place to be able to get a hit in there, because, well, maybe not, because that big sort of sweeping attack coming from the side is pretty dramatic and looks like he's about to get hit. But then the enemy sort of resets and stops and doesn't swing down, and Matthew manages to correctly get a hit across, right? So he read that correctly, starts to strafe to the side. Okay, now actually manages to get most of the way behind the enemy before the enemy swipes around and hits him, and weirdly seems to, no, this looks like a bug. Okay, so weirdly like connects with him, but doesn't do damage and doesn't like seem to deplete his stamina. So it didn't like hit his shield either. That's really weird. And then it like swings back. So that in and of itself is like a really weird like hitbox issue in and of itself. It might, oh, I think I know what's happening. I think it's just like resetting. It's not actually fully attacking, maybe. We'll look at that in context in just a second. So then Matthew gets up behind it, would have plenty of time for another attack, and he correctly sees this, executes another attack, misses unfortunately, but that was a correct read. Now he's going to get punished for that potentially, and he decides to wall up with his shield, correctly parries it, negates the damage, decides to continue shielding up while walking back. Unfortunately, it actually looks like it missed him the second time. No, it didn't. Okay. So it hit him. It's not really doing all that much stamina damage, right? It's not draining all that much. So he must have a really good shield, must have upgraded it, or it's just sort of balanced that way. So far shielding is working for him, but I can see that he doesn't have like a whole lot of time to actually counterattack per se. Now, granted, he is just kind of staying in front of him. He tries to move to the side, but he doesn't try to dodge. He doesn't really try to back up. And what happens is, because this enemy has like a relentless series of frontal attacks, he's going to keep pummeling him over and over and over again until he eventually depletes his stamina. So let's go back to speeding the video up like that. Resets very quickly, and eventually he runs out of stamina. But then, notice that, this is very important. The moment that Matthew runs out of stamina, he gets that last hit. What happens? Like, this would be a perfect time for, if the boss had infinite stamina, if it could really just like attack without resetting, this would be the perfect opportunity for the boss to smash him and like kill him. And what happens? He starts backing away. It's almost like the game was listening, quote unquote, for Matthew running out of stamina, and then once that happens, gives him a chance to recover. And then again, we sort of have cycled back to the start, where, okay, this time the enemy is not doing the battering ram charge in, but they are at a distance and now beginning to close the gap. So what we should have learned from this is that, like, okay, the enemy will have a couple of attacks for which they are vulnerable, but then they also have a flurry attack. And if you stand there, it will deplete your stamina, and it will prevent you from riposting effectively. So you're going to need to devise another strategy, including perhaps getting behind it, or just backing off and waiting for your next opportunity. It might be kind of like a joust, where you have to like rear back and then charge up and then fling yourself at the enemy and then do that over and over again. So yes, this is an enemy that has a relentless, very powerful, very like consecutive attack, and it can drain your stamina. However, it gives you a chance to recover, and there are ways to read its attacks, which he's doing effectively. And also, this is like the last area of the game. I mean, obviously there are the giant memories, but it makes sense for enemies here to be cracked, right? Like these are the last major like armored knight type enemies that you're going to fight in the game in all likelihood. So none of this to me seems to be unfair. And if you're trying to craft an argument around the idea that this is a representative enemy, this enemy is a good way of representing the overall lack of quality in the enemy implementation in this game, I think it's not a very good example. Personally. Saria says, oh, I was a very snobbish kid when it came to gaming as a kid. I got the game and I was like, oh, this guy must be Link because he has pointy ears and he's wearing green but has no hat. It was not Link. literally didn't get how it a chance because I realized it wasn't a Zelda thing. That's fair. So the first video game I ever played, at least on my own, maybe I played something in an arcade once, was Kirby's Dream Land for the Game Boy. And at the time, I don't know why, but I was like a huge Mighty Morphin Power Rangers fan when I was a kid. And so my brain looked at the cartridge and it said Kirby on it, but I thought it said Kimberly. And Kimberly was the name of the Pink Ranger, if I remember correctly. And so I was like extra excited because I thought it was a Power Rangers game, and I got to play as Kimberly in her Dreamland for some reason. And then I picked it up, and there was a little white puffball. I was like, "Who the fuck is this? Did he eat Kimberly? Do I have to go get her back? Like, what happened?" I was very confused. But then I, actually read the word. And I really enjoyed it. But I can understand, yeah, like Kimberly. Kirby just wanted to be a Power Ranger. He was just trying to join up, and that was that was the only way he knew how. Yeah. Oh, whoops. Gotta put this back. Whoop. And
Nothing of the sometimes wildly inaccurate hitboxes on bosses and enemies,
yeah, I'm not gonna defend those.
which sometimes teleported me into a grab from several feet away. Some overhead attacks from the bosses leave me with the impression that the hitbox on some of their weapons is 5 times wider than the actual blade itself.
Yeah, let's take a look at that. Yeah, I think that's another one of those things where it's like, oof, that's not very good. But so here comes the oh yeah. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. So there's the problem. The character is dodging away, and the sword probably has like a little bit of an imprecise hitbox around it, like this, like a cylinder. And then the feet also have like an imprecise hitbox, like cylinder. And like if a little teeny tiny bit of your foot touches the big glob of the sword, then it's going to apply as much damage to you as if you got hit like in the face. So it's unfortunate. I'm not gonna defend it per se. I think that they probably should have just made the hitbox like a little like end here or something. It might have like cheesed it a little bit. But this isn't like you're not playing Call of Duty or whatever. Probably would have made these things feel a little bit more fair. Yeah. Oh, whoops.
Is wider than the actual blade itself. Perhaps I should give Fromsoft the benefit of the doubt on this. Dark Souls 1 suffered from some awful lock-on issues pre-patch. I'd like to assume a similar patch might sort some of these issues out, but the cynic in me says the patch.
This one is just like, it's just interestingly, it's the same thing, right? Like he's dodging away, and then the blade comes down here. We can see the blade is like basically a foot away from his foot. And for all intents and purposes, like, yeah, this should not be a this should not have hit. This is a bug. This is not correct. But I think, as we discussed before, the problem is that they probably just put like one big ass cylinder for collision around the entire sword spear, and then like the little Blumphy cylinder off of his foot probably just overlapped in an inconvenient way. And unfortunately, it's one of those things, like, to actually make a hitbox that correctly conforms to the model. It's pretty complex, and it's more computationally intense, especially if your characters are animating in complex ways. And depending on the limitations of the engine, they might literally just not have had the tech and the time to do it at the time. I know that sounds like an excuse, and maybe you could say that it is, but honestly, like, part of the problem is just sometimes the engine that you have to work with will not let you get away with that. But I say that, and I don't really know, because I don't remember Dark Souls 1 and Demon Souls having that problem. So it's kind of weird for me to just be like, well, something about the Dark Souls 2 engine specifically made it so that they couldn't draw like more compelling hitboxes. I don't know. It feels weird. That whole hitbox situation is one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I'll devil's advocate for the sake of being fair or thorough or whatever, but yeah, it's kind of shit.
Pre-patch. I'd like to
For the record, like, nobody wants to ship a game like this. It's one of those like things that kind of just sucks that happens sometimes. Saria says, swing sword. How did you hit me? I swung my sword. I dodged. Well, if you dodged, you wouldn't be bleeding. Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to find some charitable way to look at it, but it's really bad. It's really bad.
to assume a similar patch might sort some of these issues out, but the cynic in me says they're here to stay. Enemy designs in general are a big step down from Dark Souls 1. Nearly all of them are humanoids with similar movesets. The vast majority that don't conform to that style were all present in Dark Souls 1. Basilisks, wheel skeletons, giant rats, mimics, and necromancers all originate from the first game. By comparison, Dark Souls 2 brings almost nothing new to the table. Even the
Okay, so we went over the bosses last time, and I definitely don't get that impression, but let's take a look. Isn't there just like a... I shouldn't be using Extra Life. Okay. But, oh man, it kind of sucks that they don't have, there's so many ads, jeez. No, come on. Okay, sorry. I get, like, Extra Life gives me the fucking anxiety, like Ajita. Like, it's just, but anyway, let's see. It would be great if they showed us, more specific, pictures or whatever, but I don't know, Guardian Dragon, Germ Warrior, Grave Wardens, these are the... Yeah, the Bell Keepers, the Phantoms, those are, you know, kind of interesting. There are the... So, okay, sorry, I'm kind of babbling here. Let's just take a look at some of the different types of enemies that Dark Souls 2 introduces and see if, like, the vast majority of them are derivative or whatnot. So... I'm not going to look at like invaders, although the invaders do actually add a lot, and there are a lot of really interesting ones with interesting builds and stuff like that, right? But like, let's take a look at this. What's an Aldea Warlock? Okay, these guys are kind of cool. These guys are new, right? They weren't in there previously. Alun Knights. These guys, yeah, they are enemies that have, you know, they're humanoids and they have a sword and they swing it, but they also have like lightning attacks. They feel distinct from the Black Knights in Dark Souls 1. The captains feel distinct. Their like great bows feel distinct as well. So I don't know. We're not gonna go through all these, by the way. I'm just gonna like pick a few examples. Like, let's see, the Amana Aberration, right? These guys over here, the guys that are like lurking in the water, and they have the unique mechanic with the bright bugs that kind of hover over them. And the song, and that all kind of ties into what's going on in Amana, like narratively. Yeah, that seems pretty new to me. The Amana Priestesses, those as well, like those are kind of like these magical sentry, sentinel, sniper type things. Those are kind of new. I guess they're kind of similar in some regards to the what are those guys, like the Seath's channelers or whatever, sort of, but I don't know, they feel pretty new. Let's see. Let's just go through the A's, right? Armored Skeleton. Those are the same. That's fine. Whatever. They're literally the same thing, as far as I can recall. Azlatil, Aros Knight. This guy's an invader. Right, but even in just the A's, there's quite a bit of difference there. I'm gonna scroll through here. Yes, there are soldiers. There are hollows. But I was thinking of, you know, there are the Blue Flame or Ladia Knights, I think they're called. You know, the I'm blanking here. I can't describe them. It's just easier to show. Where the hell is the Ladia Witch? Okay, yeah. These guys, oh, there are these guys, I forgot about them. Ladia Pyromancer. Okay, I guess I don't know what they're actually called. They're the ones in the Undead Crypt that are like, they kind of look like ghosts. They don't have a face and they kind of float, and they have a sword that is also used as a catalyst. You know, a little bit deeper. Lion Clan Warriors, pretty cool, right? Those are pretty different. We got Undead Aberration. These guys are pretty different. Right, that's pretty unique. Well, oh yeah, the Wall Specters, Washing Pole Phantom. No. There are invisible enemies, you know, that's kind of a new thing. Yeah, the lizards are kind of brought back, but the salamanders are new. The falconers are new. Flexile sentry is new. The forest grotesque. What's this guy? Oh yeah, those are kind of generic, I guess, but they are technically new. Um, Look at how many fucking enemies there are in the game. Like, granted that some of these are from the DLC, but like a good chunk of them are from the DLC. But still, I just don't. I don't really see it. I don't really see that it's all like super derivative. Even the different types of armored enemies have different like visual language. They have different attacks. They can do things that kind of surprise you. You know, not really seeing. I don't think that this is a fair criticism at all. Roaming soul. Yeah, these are the invisible guys, right? Yeah. So, oh, the pigs. Yeah, that's a good point too. The pigs are a good one. Yeah, I don't get this. I guess like as a developer, I have to kind of try to take this approach, right? If you make a game that has 100 enemies in it, and you know for a fact that you designed 100 enemies and you put them in your game, and you send your game out to 100 players, and 100 players play your game, and they come back and say, I really hated this game because it only had 5 enemies in it. The correct response to that is not, no, you're wrong, you're stupid, we had 100, you didn't fucking count, idiot. Right? That's not, the correct response is, okay, what did I do wrong? Like, how did we get here? Because I know I put 100 enemies in the game, so why is my player having this experience? And what can I do to enhance their experience? So Matthew is giving like some useful feedback, and he's saying, I don't feel like I am experiencing enough enemy variety. And if at the end of the day, if you do a breakdown of all the enemies and they basically are either like soldiers or fodder or big armored guys, and that's a consistent piece of feedback, it's worth listening to. I don't agree with it because I think most of the enemies in the game have some kind of like a slight variation or innovation or quirk or whatever. Like, yeah, there are soldiers in the Shaded Woods and there are soldiers in Sinner's Rise, but the ones in the Shaded Woods are invisible and have that mechanic where they interact with the moaning trees, and the ones here are like sentries with crossbows. It's very different. And then these aren't the soldiers I'm talking about. These are I forget what they're called, like enhanced undead or something like that. But they, you know, there are different varieties of these as well. Like some of them scream and act like traps and explode on you. Others like chase you around. Some of them do like petrification. Others do fire. Some of them are like hiding down in the water in the lower areas of the Sinner's Rise and the Bastille and whatnot. And they have like scripted behavior where they're all kind of like rush you and flank you. So like, I don't know. I think it's very like myopic to just say some of these enemies are carried over from the previous games or fit into a certain archetype, and like I don't like it. I gotta be honest. I don't like it. Sorry says I'm listening 100%, but my eyes are looking at the ads, and I'm just like, man, I'll never buy this stuff. Yeah, it's a little excessive. Look, I guess like Fextra Life has kind of spiraled into its own like sovereign nation essentially, and they need money to continue being a sovereign nation. But it's like it's just so much, you know. It makes my eyes bleed. Like I'm not trying to whine or anything, but it's very excessive, and it immediately just makes me like turned off to the site. I much prefer the Dark Souls 2 wiki because it's basically just like text that is nicely formatted with some nice little pictures here and there. It doesn't need all of this like panache or whatever. I just yeah, it's kind of cool to have the image in the background and have the little bonfires and everything, but if the price you pay for that, I mean, the little icons are nice. Like, I'm not trying to slander the people who put this together. It obviously took a lot of work, but like if I have to, you know, oh wow, I'm really glad that I can go on this particular tour to Rome for only $35 or from $35. Oh cool, it's dancing cats in the rain, just what I needed with my I actually kind of like the cats with my Dark Souls 2 info. I'm just saying, like, I can find dancing cats pretty easily if I want them. And now I get some Rolaids. Cool. Hey, have dancing cats like increased your agita? Do you feel like you're about to? Your throat's on fire? Well, we just have the thing that's just perfect for you. Oh, hey, look, eat this cheese. Eat this cheese directly after your heartburn medication. Like, you want to buy this fucking car? Team up with Liam Neeson and Lady. Oh, it is. Is it actually a Nissan? No, it's a Mazda. Okay, damn it. I was hoping there was gonna be like a Liam Neeson joke that I could sneak in there, but didn't get away with it. Keeps coming. I fucking better close this down because otherwise I'm gonna be dad joke factory pretty soon, more so than usual. Saria says the correct response is, did we just create Breath of the Wild? Tears of the Kingdom, thank you for saving us from lack of enemy variety. Still doesn't touch Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. So are you saying that you feel like Breath of the Wild itself was pretty derivative in terms of like enemy content? I don't remember having a great time with that game. I feel like there was a lot of moblins in little camps, and some of them more dramatic. I think that the Lionels were new, right? Those are new innovations for that game. But a lot of the other stuff felt like it was kind of just copied over. Honestly, I haven't played Tears of the Kingdom yet. I would maybe like to. I'm not really into the whole like crafting side of things. But man, if they make another goddamn Zelda game with you know, I don't know. It shouldn't be so negative. I really love the Zelda games, but I really hope the next one doesn't. It's not like, okay, go over here. This is the water place, and the Zoras are here. Now go over here. This is the Goron place. The Gorons are upset because something took over their place, and they want to eat the rocks, but they don't have the good rocks that they want to eat. You gotta help them. The Zoras, something froze over, or something like messed with their fountain. You gotta help them because they need the water, and they can't do that. Go to the Gerudos in the desert. You know, they want your help because they have a problem in the desert. You know, like, I'm oversimplifying it. I'm not being very nice, and I apologize. But like, I feel like the stories of like the Zora and the Gorons and everything like that have already been told. Like, if you're gonna tell them again, do something weird with it. I did like the Majora's Mask. They had like the Death Mountain equivalent was like totally frozen over, right? That's cool. But don't just like copy and paste the Gorons into another Death Mountain, another lava situation. You know, like, put them somewhere else. Make them do something fun. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I'm curious how you feel about it, honestly. It seems like maybe you'd like a little bit more variation from the franchise as well.
Exploding enemies are inexplicably human, when it would have made far more sense for them to be some weird type of fauna like the basilisk.
Okay, that doesn't make any sense because he's saying that the exploding enemies in the Bastille, it doesn't make any. I'm sorry for butchering that French, by the way. It doesn't make sense for them to be human. They should be a weird fauna instead. My brother in Miyazaki, it's a prison, and they were brought there and turned into these horrible, like, awful mummies. It's a prison for humans. It's not like a jail for like wayward zoo rejects or something. It's a human prison. It's a hollow prison. They can't be anything other than human. They need to be human for any of this to work. That's probably one of the weirdest takes that I've heard so far.
Especially considering the number of strange locations they end up in.
This one is a little bit more understandable. I'm not actually sure what the lore reason for why they are up here. It makes more sense for them to be in the Bastille. I don't know what they're doing up here. The only thing I can think is that maybe Aldia was messing around with them, and then he decided to just kind of send them up here because he didn't know what to do with them when he was done, and he just kind of like shoved them there. Maybe. Actually kind of like that idea, but yeah, here it's, I guess, again, if he's so I find those, hang on, if his criticism was that those enemies just like don't make sense in that because they're just another humanoid enemy and it should have been fauna instead, I disagree with that. If his criticism is that they're all over the place and they shouldn't be, then I maybe agree with that more, because I would have been fine with them just hanging out in the Bastille. From a developer standpoint, it makes sense though if you put all the effort into like creating an enemy that you find is compelling and versatile. Try to put it in other places, but obviously it has to fit the lore. It has to be a good explanation for it. I really love those sort of black oily alien hand type things that show up in the gutter. That's another or the Black Gulch, I'm sorry. It's another great example of an enemy that's an innovation in this game, along with those like weird, like hairless, enhanced dog type creatures, and along with the ogres as well. I mean, there's a lot like that are new, and along with the little kobolds, like the kobolds are new as well. Um, so yeah, it's just like flat out mathematically false that there are all the enemies in this game are derivative or whatever. Um, but uh, but yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought. I guess it matters where you put the enemies, as well as whether or not they are intrinsically varied as well. And it will says it might be fun for the players that are new to Zelda, but for me that has played every game, it was kind of a letdown how they reintroduced them. Yeah, that's kind of how I felt about it as well. It felt like they were almost like same thing with Mario Odyssey to a lesser extent, that they were like, this game is for the next generation of players. This is going to be the next generation's first big Zelda game, and we are prioritizing them first and foremost. So, the next generation that we're targeting might not have played through the Lost Woods, so they might not know about a level where you're going through a forest maze, and I forget if you have to follow the audio cue like you did in the previous titles, but you go through the maze, and if you go down the wrong path, it resets and sends you back, and then you get the Master Sword. You have to go through these specific like plot beats and upgrade paths and stuff like that a lot of people would have already experienced or whatnot. But I think it's also sort of okay. Like, I was personally pretty disappointed by it, and I didn't like how much was referential and how much was like callbacks and stuff like that, how many things felt like retreads. But at the same time, I was, however old I was, let's just say that I was older than I was when I played Wind Waker, for example, or Twilight Princess. And if Nintendo was sending a message out saying like, hey, you had your fun, now it's their turn, and if you like this is great, like, please play the game, please enjoy it, but also, like, we're not gonna prioritize you, we're gonna prioritize these guys over there, then I think that's something I can live with personally. Whether, like, how people feel about that is going to vary. I'd be curious if you know what I'm talking about, and if you would agree, or if you think I'm just like being weird, let me know. But yeah, ironically, at the same time, I was also like, bring me back I want my Zelda dungeons back. I don't want these like flying things and like big elephants or whatever. I don't want like a bird. I want the bird to be 4 hours long with like convoluted puzzles, and I want to be scratching my head, and I want to not leave the dungeon until the 90-second soundtrack is burned into my brain for the rest of my life, because I like that, and I don't want to engage with like the motion puzzles and stuff like that. I want my old Zelda dungeons for me, and I'm not going to leave until I get them. And I kept waiting. I played through the whole game, and I kept waiting for my Zelda dungeons to show up, and I never got my Zelda dungeons. I was very upset. I was very disappointed. So on the one hand, I'm like pissed off because of how much is the same, and then I'm pissed off because not enough of it is the way that I want it to. So I guess I just kind of like proven Nintendo right, in a sense that like, you're not gonna please me anyway, so it's just like, focus on somebody else. But I don't know. Oh yeah, sorry, I saw that Wayward Zoo Rejects thing. I kind of felt a little bad as I was saying that. Sorry says, I'm 50-50 on it. On one hand, yeah, it'd be nice to see differing things, because it's one of my favorite things about Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks, but I also enjoy the nostalgia. Yeah. I mean, in a perfect world, there would be like, I don't know, I think it would be really, really cool to have a From Software game that is slow and restrained and more based on exploration, and sort of like more of the like long marathons of Dark Souls 1 rather than the sprints of Dark Souls 2 and 3. And then have like the crazy off the wall action stuff like Sekiro and Shadow of the Erdtree. Unfortunately, don't have time to make two masterpieces simultaneously all the time. But similarly for the Legend of Zelda stuff, we could get a cool experimental weird off the wall thing, and then like a traditional like, hey, don't worry, we got you, we're always gonna, like, every 4 or 5 years, we're gonna put out one like safe little dungeon. You're gonna get like 3 or 4 new items with cool new abilities, new gimmicks. You know, Ganon's gonna show up, but maybe he's not gonna be a pig this time. Maybe he's gonna be a horse instead. You know, Zelda's gonna be there, and maybe this time she's kind of hang out in the background. Maybe this time you'll play as Zelda, something like a little something new, a little something different. Arrows, lightning arrows instead of light arrows. You know, we don't want to push it too much, but we give you a little variety. You know, and then get your dungeons, get your sword, get your victory, and then while you're playing with that, then we'll have this like massive expansive like experimental like crazy. I mean, you can't fault like Tears of the Kingdom for being experimental. Like they went crazy with that, right? Like in a good way. If you're into that sort of thing. Very, very bold, very interesting. Basically like, here's this beautiful crafted amazing world that we made and populated with all these like floating islands and ancient ruins and full of lore and myth and culture and whatever else. Break it, destroy it, demolish it, make a crazy like rotating dick robot that just like knocks enemies off of their feet. Make a giant explosive bongo drum you can actually actively play while it's plowing across the land. It just like it's great. Isn't there an ability that lets you like literally just clip through the ground and like go through terrain that's above you? So if you just get tired of doing a puzzle or whatever, you just and just leave. It's great. It takes a certain amount, like a big amount of courage and humility, ironically, to be willing to make a game and try to craft it and like to hone it and refine it and present it in a certain specific way, and then give the players the keys to just fuck it up and actively reward them for doing so. It's a really cool design philosophy. I'm never going to play it because I like to be told what to do in games. So that all that freedom would just like overwhelm me with all the different like gears and parts and bits and stuff like that. I don't know if I can do all that, but still, I respect it for sure. Anna Will says, I feel the same way as Sari's opponent. It is the nostalgia that made it great, and yes, those games did get different things. Yes, it's very true. I still miss it. I still want like just one more like traditional like a true sequel to Ocarina of Time. I guess you could say Twilight Princess was a true sequel to Ocarina of Time. But Sari says, God, I love Tears of the Kingdom. I'm slightly surprised, but happy to hear you say that. My favorite thing is walking around in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and looking at everything in the environment and going to the lore book and theorizing. Oh, okay, good. Yeah, for some reason I would be surprised if you were like spending hours like I don't know if you saw like video game donkeys, videos where he's like building like crazy robots and contraptions and stuff like that. Didn't somebody actually manage to build a primitive computer in? I know they did in Minecraft, but like a simple logic circuit or something like that in Here's the Kingdom. But yeah, that's cool. I guess that's a testament to the game too, is that it enables all sorts of different types of play for different types of players.
I imagine the team have a lot of respect for Miyazaki, and it feels to me that crippled them from creating a more original experience. They probably didn't want to trample on the legacy of the previous games, so Dark Souls 2 ends up playing it very safe.
I don't get that at all. Like, Dark Souls 2 feels like it takes a lot of really weird and quirky risks. It doesn't feel like it's playing. I mean, like, as he's saying this, he's in like a draconic sanctuary with like rotted, festering dragon eggs at the top of the world on these tiny needle-like spires of rock, tiny by comparison, headed towards like this massive shrine and trying to talk to a dragon to gain access to the memories of like these weird alien looking giants to kind of go into the past to rewrite the past to become the hero that saves the world. I mean, like, part of that is like Artorias, like, I guess, so you could say it's a bit of a sequel to that. But to say that the Dragon Eerie is not like is saying too close to Dark Souls, that feels weird to me. Saying that like the Shaded Woods or the Black Gulch or I don't know. Yeah, there are 4 great ones that you visit, and then you go to a castle with an old like sullen king and all that. But I mean, it's a fucking sequel, you know. Silent Hill 2 is an amazing sequel to Silent Hill 1. Changed a whole lot of stuff, but you know, you still go to the town and there is still fog and like a darker otherworld or whatever. I think that's fine too. Like, it didn't need to take place in another town. It's really cool that Silent Hill F is going elsewhere, not just going back to the same American town over and over again. But also, you know, it's really hard for me to look at Dark Souls 2 and be like, this is just derivative in a negative way.
As a result, too much of this game feels too familiar. The Gutter is effectively the third time this kind of area has been done in the Souls games, and other areas like the Tower of Flame and Earthen Peak feel very reminiscent. Some of
I think the Gutter is yeah, it's definitely reminiscent of the like poison, or not the Poison Swamp. Well, I mean that's a big difference, right? Like Blighttown down into the Poison Swamp feels very reminiscent. Like, okay, so yeah, Blighttown down to the Poison Swamp is basically a recreation of Valley of Defilement. Like, obviously there's some differences, but it's very, very similar. I would say that the Gutter into Black Gulch, the whole like precarious city suspended in a void of darkness that's completely engulfed in the darkness until you like open it up with like adding lights. I think that's a pretty significant innovation. I think that's more innovative than the like Demon Souls 2 Dark Souls is less innovative in its Gutter equivalent than Dark Souls 1 to Dark Souls 2. There's more experimentation. There's more like I don't know, the feeling of coming into Blighttown for the first time. You feel like everything is kind of like sick and diseased and rotting, and like you can smell the air through the screen, if that makes sense. It just feels like heavy and slow. And Blighttown, the Gutter doesn't feel like that. It feels like open and hollow and cold. It's like a void. It's drawing you in with its I don't know. It's like terrifying as opposed to horrifying, if that makes sense, if I'm using the words right.
of the bosses are outright lifted from Dark Souls 1, and the soundtrack pales in comparison.
Okay, we're gonna talk about the soundtrack more, but like this is not, to say that the old Dragon Slayer is lifted from Dark Souls 1 is also really weird. Yeah, it's like quote unquote the same character, but the fight is massively different. It's a reference, it's a nod, and like depending on how you interpret the lore of this character, I think it's more meant to be somebody who took up the mantle of Ornstein rather than Ornstein himself. So diegetically, it's like this character is cosplaying as Ornstein. And so the boss fight feels like a cheap imitation. It feels like a cosplay. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that to insult cosplayers. Like, there's some really amazing cosplay. But yeah, it feels like an imitation. It doesn't feel like it's the real knight that you're fighting. And I think that's kind of the point. So what a cool way to reincorporate a character without literally bringing him back, you know? I'm going to do a whole stream pretty soon about the music, but let's just hear him out real quick.
After beating the game, one of the first things I did was look up who the composer was, and I was completely shocked to find out it was the same person.
Not technically true. Like, there are a couple of different composers. One of the composers is, I think, Motoi Sakuraba, and he did some of the music for Dark Souls 1, I think maybe all of it. But another is Yuka Kitamura, and she did the music for, well, there's like 6 composers on Bloodborne or something like that, but she composed some of the tracks on Bloodborne and on Sekiro as well. And I think there was one other person that I'm forgetting. But yeah, so it's not just the one person, just to be clear.
The music in Dark Souls 2 feels so phoned in, with nearly every track feels...
Faker, huh, don't make me laugh. You're not even good enough to be my fake. Man, I want to cosplay. I have always wanted to, and just have never pulled it off. I think I told you that the cringy story where I like cosplayed as Kakazu one year for Halloween. And that's the closest that I've come. And literally, I just bought like an outfit off of Etsy or something like that. One of these days, I just have to pick a character that kind of fits my aesthetic, I suppose. Who said it like that? But anyway, no, I really like the cosplay is like its own art form now.
feeling like an imitation of the Ornstein and Smo theme. That track in Dark Souls 1 was great, mostly because of the several different phases it morphed through, which lent energy and a sense of progression to the fight. but it's hardly representative of that game's music as a whole. Some of the other tracks were similarly bombastic, but lots of others went for a more sorrowful sort of tone, like the battles with Sif, Artorias, Gwyn, Priscilla, the Moonlight Butterfly, and Dark Sun Gwyndolin. By comparison, Dark Souls 2 almost never breaks out of the mold. Velstalt is obviously designed to mirror the appearance and role of Garl Vinland from Demon Souls, but their tracks are worlds apart.
Okay, wait, what?
I suppose this is all going to come down to taste, but I know which one I think is far more memorable.
Okay, so this is really weird. I won't comment too much on this now because I want to do like the whole music stream comparing the like going through and analyzing the soundtracks and stuff like that. Hopefully within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Ideally less than 3. But anyway, so my problem here is that on the one hand he says that a lot of the tracks are derivative and samey, and they all sound like different interpolations of the Ornstein and Smo theme. We'll see this when we go through the soundtrack. I highly disagree with that. There are a couple of soundtracks that tracks that do indeed sound kind of similar, but even those, for the most part, have their own innovations to it. Let's just, I'm probably gonna get copyright struck for this, but whatever. Just as a quick, oh, Sage is streaming, cool. What was I gonna say? Wow, why is my brain doing this? 1 second, I'm sorry. Old Dragon Slayer, there we go. Old Dragon Slayer. Okay, so we'll see if we can listen to a little bit of this. Okay, sorry if that was a little bit loud. I'll consider sharing the story, sorry. Okay, so just kind of listen to this as we're going. We already started off, oh yeah, Yuka Kitamura. We already started off with like some more like female vocals and some more like, I guess like bombastic percussion, you can call that. But let's just listen to the theme real quick. Okay, so did you notice something about that? I'm not like an expert on music theory or anything like that, but if you listen to the rhythm, it's not like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or even like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? It's actually in 7. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Pretty cool. Let's listen to a little snip one more time. Actually, 1 sec. Hear that? 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, right? It's like got a really unique kind of pulse and rhythm to it. But now listen to when this, like the string stabs come in here in this second part. So we've established the rhythm, we kind of got the chord groove going, and now it's going to bring in this additional element that sounds like a like a little stab, right? There. So what's happening there is that you have, I don't know if you can hear my tapping or whatever, but like you have the core melody, which is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. At the same time, you have this other rhythm layered on top of it going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you have like these two like dueling 7/8 versus 7/4, I think, tempos, both of which are pretty unconventional and like pretty like they kind of keep you on off your rhythm. And you don't hear them like all that much. And not only that, they're like dueling each other and fighting each other in the song. In the meantime, you have like the horns that are panned to the left, and the horns are like doing this descended like da 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 da, like I don't know, almost drawing you down deeper with this like low brass that's contrasting with the high stabs from the strings on the right. And that's just like the first like 20 seconds or so, 30 seconds of the track. That is not at all what the fuck Sakuraba is doing with the theme for Ornstein and Smo. Very, very different. So just for a reference, right? And Smo, see, it is definitely bombastic. It's definitely like memorable. It's intense, right? But 2, 3, 4. The rhythm is very much more stable, right? 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. more majestic, more imperious. The bells, the male choir that's kind of a little bit more somber. Now the brass comes in, quite regal, like processional. A little bit of extra brass in the background. Stab, stab, stab. So it really is genuinely great, but also it's very, very different tonally. I understand why somebody would listen to this and be like, okay, one of them has like an orchestra with some brass, and the other one has some brass with an orchestra, and say that they're basically the same. But to me anyway, and I hope to be able to explain this better, more thoroughly in the music specific stream, they sound completely different. Like, to me, they don't have anything to do with each other, except for one little Easter egg, which I'm going to save for the stream, but I'll just say that there is one little quote that does actually connect it. Yuka Kitamura found like a little nugget to, you know what, fuck it, we're already, we're already in it. Let's see if I can find it. Oh yeah, here we go. This is like the big iconic part of the song. Okay, there's a big build up, like right in the middle of the fight. Everything's getting really intense. And now we get to this part. Okay, so that little bit, the da da da, that specific little motif, somewhere in that song, I don't even remember where it was, but I remember distinctly, I was listening to this earlier, that there is a little moment somewhere in here where you hear that exact motif. It's pretty much exactly the same, just for a little second. Let's see if we can find it in the next minute. If not, I'll go back to the video, but... Notice how they're kind of weaving a little bit of discord in there too. I think that's it, actually. It's not quite the same. I have to break it down a little bit more. Okay, so that little da da da, it's not exactly what I thought, right? But I think that's meant to directly reference the previous fight before, because we had all these little, you know, that recurring motif of like da 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 da, like over and over again as it was ramping up. Da da da. Move forward. Here we go. Here we go. Yeah, and so that's something that Sakuraba likes to do a lot as well. If we ever talk about the Dark Souls 1 soundtrack, he is very, very fond of making little triplets, like little clusters of 3 notes that he then will use over and over again as motifs. For example, the most iconic one is probably when you hear OST like tracks that are referencing Sisters of Chaos. You'll usually hear like a descending na na na, like that specific minor third down is a motif that references those characters specifically. It's really cool. So yeah, basically, he's wrong. They were cooking indeed. Okay, so I'm gonna go check on my dog real quick. BRB for 5 minutes. Then I will tell the story and see if we can wrap up the video. I'll be right back. Sorry. Sorry. Taria says, took the short break as a moment to watch a red hot ball clip. Now, Saria, I know what you're referring to, because I also, from time to time, enjoy watching red hot balls. Specifically, red hot balls immersed in substances that result in a jet of liquid that is released. It's very satisfying and cathartic, even calming, to watch red hot balls immersed in such things. However, perhaps for the benefit of our viewers and fellow chatsmans, you might provide some clarification as to the nature of the clips you are watching. Just for clarity. Is John the Crow from Bill and Mandy? Nope, I do not know who Bill and Mandy are. Wait, is that a Nickelodeon Cartoon Network show? The Grim Adventures of Bill and Mandy? Oh, you're just watching balls. Okay. Me too. Love watching balls. No, John the Crow is, So, I'm bad at coming up with names, and I brainstormed a whole big list of them, and then the only one that I kind of liked was John the Raven, because I like the name John, and I also like ravens. And then I have, like, crows in my neighborhood that I'm, like, feeding peanuts, and they come when I whistle. I'm in love with them all. They're amazing. And so I told my friend, hey, I'm gonna make a YouTube channel. What do you think of this name? And he's like, okay, what, are you a furry or something? I was like, no. Well, people are gonna look at that and they're gonna think you're furry. I'm like, okay. So what then? He's like, well, what's something that sounds like Maven that's better than that? I'm like, a raven that's better than that. And I was like, oh, well, I don't like Maven. Maven kind of feels like it's similar. But, it means like an expert on something. He's like, there you go, John the Maven. That's your YouTube channel. Like, don't you want to hear my other ideas? Why would I need to? You already have your channel name. And at first I was like, okay. But then I was like, you know what? It actually kind of fits. And the Raven iconography just kind of came along with it because it just felt like it fit, So I can kind of get away with like my pseudo persona as a I'm not really a furry, but like as a raven man, but also have a name that isn't literally just the animal. I actually not sure. I think they rendered it out. I'm looking at the picture, the animated picture, and it looks more like a crow than a raven, but I'm not 100% sure. It was AI generated, and honestly, like I have been looking for an artist. I'm just really, really picky. And so my goal for the foreseeable future, is to start to replace some of this stuff with like bespoke art, made by people, rather than robots. So yeah. John, you have to look at the crow from Bill and Mandy. Yeah, let's take a look. Bill and Mandy Crow. This one?
Alas, poor Billy, destined to walk the sepulchred streets of suburbia, a doomed husk of a child. Do not cry for him. Do not cry!
Honestly, that's me. Honestly. Kinda. That's me, yeah.
Streets of suburbia, a doomed husk of a child. Do not cry for him. Do not cry!
Yes, I love him. That's perfect. I kind of wish it was inspired by that now, but no, I guess I'm happy that it's just like a happy accident. You're not stupid. Bill and Mandy characters are Raven. Yeah, my like channel iconography and stuff is basically just like a mishmash of ravens and crows at this point. Corvids. John the Morbid Corvid. That's me.
I'd say the same is true for the other music in general. Even the lesser tracks from Dark
Do not cry for him.
Souls had more personality to them, like Pinwheel and Seath. With the exception of the end boss theme, I found the soundtrack of Dark Souls 2 to be completely interchangeable. It's all perfectly serviceable, but if you ask me, that's a big step down. The music may be a bit uninspired, but that's nothing compared to the completely rehashed story, which is once again about linking the fire.
Okay, so Oh my god. The soundtrack stuff. I will talk in great detail during the music stream about each of the individual tracks. However, I will say for now that in order to be fair, I I broke it down mathematically. I forget exactly what the numbers were, but I listened to the Dark Souls 1 and 2 soundtracks and 3 multiple times. And I looked at the number of different tracks that are like fit different styles and genres, and like some of them are experimental and like weird abstract ambient shit. Some of them are more like fun upbeat percussion and whatnot. Some are more exciting, some are more somber. Just mathematically it's just false. There's a lot of variety. They are not all derivative of or reminiscent of or thematically or acoustically connected to the Ornstein theme. It's just a vast, incurious, lame ass. I'm sorry, but like I feel pretty strongly about this. Like lame ass reaction to the soundtrack, and I think it was that comment actually where I was like, "Hang the fuck on," and I went and listened to it, and I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I have to talk about this. Like, I'm really frustrated. I need to vent this to some other human being." So again, thank you for enabling me in doing this. I really appreciate it. But like this is the one thing where it's like, okay, you can critique the hitboxes, you can critique the story, you can critique the character design, the boss variation. This is just false. It is factually false, and the only way you get to this conclusion is by not being curious and not really listening. So that's where I kind of motivated me to want to delve into it further. Sorry says, it's a sequel. Why wouldn't it be about linking the flame? It's a huge thing in this universe. It's like being upset that Zelda games have Demon Kings even without Ganon. Yeah. I agree with you, and we're gonna delve into I'll just say that again, like, it's sort of a 1-2 punch, because this is also really myopic and short-sighted, which is probably the same thing, but you know what I mean. Let's first of all, for a sequel to be about linking the fire, as you're saying, Sario, that does not automatically discredit it, right? Like, they want to tell a story that continues upon the previously established themes, expands on them, spends more time playing with them, whatever. That's a totally legitimate thing to want to do with the universe that you've created. If it's just the same thing over and over again and nothing changes, then that's one thing. But I mean, I guess it's kind of like saying Silent Hill is a series about being trapped in a horrible other world and terrified and facing your fears, right? That's what the first game is about. The second game is about. The third game is about. The fourth game is about, etc., etc. Go through all the series. You're trapped in a nightmare. You have to face your fears. But obviously, like, there are vast differences between all those different games. If the game was about, like, shooting enemies in, like, a corridor action arcade setting and racking up points, like House of the Dead, you'd be like, this is fucking stupid. Yeah, it's different, but it's not Silent Hill. Why would I ever want this? And to answer your question, yeah, it exists. So the answer is that you wouldn't. I mean, like, to be fair, this actually looks kind of fun, but this is not what you would actually legitimately want as a the next entry in a Silent Hill game, right? Like, this is not what most people were looking for when they wanted, like, a Silent Hill sequel, right? As interesting as it is kind of on its own, I suppose. So yeah, I don't agree with this in principle, but let's hear what he says specifically.
There's a few reasons why they shouldn't have gone down this road for the second time. First of all, there's the fact that the ending to Dark Souls 1 has been trampled on by the mere existence of Dark Souls 2. In Dark Souls 1, you got the impression that the two different endings you could choose from were in complete juxtaposition. Thanks to Dark Souls 2, we have to admit that, at best, the Link to Fire ending to Dark Souls 1 is canon, or, at worst, the ending to Dark Souls 1 makes no difference either way. If anything, Dark Souls 2 seems to hint at the latter with its talk of cycles, which is a transparent attempt to create an excuse for the inevitable Dark Souls 3.
Okay, so I hate this. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think this fucking sucks. And part of the reason why is that, how can I even explain? I'm trying to gather my thoughts for a second. So Yes, the end of Dark Souls 1, if you played it at the time, seemed to have an air of finality to it. You have one final choice to make: embrace the dark or try to reignite the fire. And then whatever you choose, the world just kind of like goes about its business, or maybe it ends, and then the story is done. If you personally would prefer that the story end there and never be expanded upon, that is a fine subjective thing, I suppose. I don't agree that the story needed to end there. I think there was still more room for the universe to be explored and elaborated on. But if you felt like that was a perfect ending, then that's okay. You're allowed to have that perspective. To use a vague analogy, I felt like Patches' story was completely like wrapped up beautifully in Dark Souls 3. No fucking reason for him to be brought back in Elden Ring. I know I shouldn't use the no reason thing because I object to that, but that is how I feel emotionally. I don't fucking want him in Elden Ring. He doesn't belong there. You know, he's a Dark Souls 3, he's a Dark Souls character, he's a Demon Souls character. He had his arc, he's done. And like, I guess if they brought him back and they actually said anything new with him, then that would be one thing. But they didn't. Before I forget, I just realized that you know, if if Anna will, if you're still here, I can tell the story of that like Halloween costume thing if you're interested. Basically, I try to 1 second. So the short version is that one year for Halloween, I decided I wanted to dress up as a character, but I didn't really know what to do because I don't usually dress up. So I just picked a character from Naruto called Kakuzu. If you're familiar with the Naruto anime, he's a character that I kind of enjoy. And specifically, if you go look at like my earlier channel stuff, a lot of what I've done has been talking about Naruto debates with other folks and all that. So I decided to pick a costume, and okay, so hopefully you'll find this entertaining. I decided to pick a costume, and it like was sort of a slightly poorly fitting like Temu or eBay or something like that costume, but I did manage to kind of pull off the look. And just for context, I'm not sure if are you familiar with Naruto? Do you know much about Naruto? Naruto, the character is called Kakuzu. He's this guy, right? So I look like this this dude over here, this creepy dude. So for the first time, I go out on my porch, and we just moved to a new neighborhood, and we're in my front yard. We're in a new neighborhood, and this is our first Halloween, and my partners are trying to make a good impression, so she put out like pumpkins, had a couple people over, had some pizza, and we were just like handing out handing out candy to kids. And then this little kid who must have been like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 comes up, and he's dressed in the cutest little like KCM or like Sage Mode Naruto, so like QB Naruto, like something like that, right? He's basically just like a little kid in his little ninja outfit with little whiskers and everything. And then so I like get up, I loom up with my Kakuzu-esque costume, stand right over him, and I'm like, "Oh, is that a Naruto costume you're wearing there?" He's like, "Yes." I said, "Then you'll recognize me, I suppose. My old nemesis come back again." And the kid, like, I think he might have been aware that his character existed, but the reality of the matter was that a tall, strange man in a creepy costume was yelling at him while brandishing a bowl of candy. And in my head I was like, "Ooh, cool, a fellow nerd. We're gonna act like nerds and cosplay together. This would be great." And it just seemed like the smart thing to do. And he kind of got scared and like hid behind his dad's legs. And so I kind of like, I took off the little face thing, my mask, and I was like, "Oh, dude, I'm sorry. We're just like from the same universe." And he just kind of like stared at me until I stopped talking, and I awkwardly like handed over the bowl of candy and just take a few extra. Just took some, and they both left. So, I mean, it wasn't that bad, I guess. But you know, for somebody who was trying to make a first impression on his first like introduction to the neighborhood, deciding to open it up with like full on like Kakuzu roleplay is probably not my best idea. It's okay. one of those things where like I'm sure it'll stick in my brain, but I'm pretty sure nobody else will remember it. Well, now you guys will. You're my living reliquary. Not reliquary, whatever. Memory holders. I don't know if there's a word for that. Anyway, thank you for sticking around through all of the ridiculousness of the stream. I appreciate it. Sorry, says Ninetales. Yeah. Kurama's great. I love him. Patchy the Pirate in Demon Souls. Yeah, he was there in Demon Souls too. I think he was technically in Sekiro, but it's more like a cameo or a reference than the literal same character. Okay, so saying that I really dislike this. Here's the thing. If you decide that you do not like the idea of a story continuing, like it has a solid end, and like get to the end of the Lord of the Rings, and then like Frodo like gets on the boat and goes to wherever they're going, and then 10 years pass and there's a sequel that comes out, and then Frodo comes back on a little boat being like, run Sam, fucking dragons, and then they have to just kind of like Gandalf shows up and he's a fire wizard now. I get that would like piss people off and maybe be a little cheesy, but yeah, on the other hand, the developers wanted to continue to explore and expand their world and their universe. And moreover, they wanted to talk about the themes and the implications of what it means to link the fire. So at the end of Dark Souls 1, you're told you either link the fire, and maybe that's good, but maybe Gwyn was kind of a dick, so you don't know for sure. Or you decide not to link the fire because Gwyn was definitely a dick, but you don't know if what you're doing there is right either. There's no real resolution. You don't really ever get to know what the consequences of your actions will be. And then Dark Souls 2 kind of does this interesting thing where it's like, well, here's the thing. Whether or not you linked the fire or decided to usher in an Age of Dark, it's not like it didn't matter, but it's not like it mattered either, because sooner or later, people will, like, basically do the same shit. They'll build kingdoms, the kingdoms will fall. They'll fight each other, then there will be peace. There will be these cycles of life and death and rebirth and everything, and that is actually baked into the First Flame, like puns sort of intended. It is just a natural part of the universe, and this is something that they kind of vaguely talk about in Elden Ring too, the laws of causality and regression. This is something that we can't really escape from. It is part of the curse. It's part of being alive. So now you're stumbling into this kingdom, and you're not some chosen undead. You're not some, like, prophesied person. You're not anybody who even necessarily even belongs in this world. But here you are, and now you get to look at what has happened since the chosen undead made their choice all that time ago. Whatever they chose, look at what happened since then. Now, you're on the path to becoming the next monarch. You're going to be the next person who inherits this world. What do you think of all that? When you become the king, what kind of king will you be? Will it like female or male king? Will you what do you think about all the other people that have had power before you and what they've done with their power? What does that mean to you? Is there actually an escape from any of this, or is it all part of an endless doomed cycle? And Dark Souls 2 kind of ends on this note where it's like, well, now you've had a chance to reflect on what happened in Dark Souls 1 and decide whether or not you think the light or the dark ending is correct. And based on all of that knowledge and your experience, now you're sitting in this chair with those thoughts, and the world is gonna, like, the stage is darkening at the end of the performance, and you can now sit and think about what you've done, basically. And then it's your turn to bequeath things to the next generation, and who knows what'll come next, right? But you should have a better idea of what'll come next based on everything you've just went through. And then Dark Souls 3 comes along and says, okay, well, the natural consequence of that, of like continuing to perpetuate the cycle of life and death, refusing to let it go, or even just like acquiescing to it, as long as this cycle continues, things are going to get worse and worse and worse and decay and degrade. And as that happens, new forms of life will kind of flourish and take over, but those will clash with the pre-existing forms of life. Energies and desires that have been pent up will start to like build up in pressure, like shaking a soda bottle, and then eventually explode in incredibly dramatic results. The barriers between worlds and time will start to disintegrate Places where you shouldn't be able to go will now become freely accessible to you. Areas, realms like the Abyss or places like that, with new forms of life that we probably shouldn't be interacting with or poisoning with our presence. Well, we're just gonna like be overlapping with them now. Everything is falling apart. Everything is unraveling. And now what are you gonna do with all that? Because we saw the first guy try to save the world, and he just kind of went along with the prophecy or rejected it. Big whoop. We saw the second guy come along, and they like studied and learned and were a scholar or participated with the scholar in reflecting on the entire world and what it's been up to in a bunch of different kingdoms, different perspectives, and then decided to either embrace that or to walk a different path. And now we're here at the aftermath of all of that, at the very end of the world, as everything is starting to crumble apart and decay and deteriorate. What do we do with that now? Do we embrace the end of everything? Do we hold out hope that there's something more, despite the fact that it's been basically proven to us that there's not? Do we act like Aldrich or what's the other guy? There's a few people who thought of different ideas, like the angelic faith or like the age of the dark deep sea or whatever it's called. Are there ways out? Are there escapes? Can we ascend to becoming dragons and just leave the world entirely? Can we go back in past to the Ring City and find anything there, right? Like, how the fuck do we get out before this is all over? Or are we just supposed to let it go and then allow for a new world to come about? Is the only way to just embrace non-attachment, sort of a Buddhist sense, right? Very, very different themes, very, very different palettes, very, very different tones, different colors, different stories, different narratives. To look at all of that and just say, nah, man, they're all about fucking linking the fire. You know, you link the fire in the first game, and then in the second game, there was a fire, and you need to link that too. And the crazy thing, bro, is that when you get to the third game, there's still a fucking fire there, and you gotta link that shit too, bro. Come on, man. Come on. There's so much more going on there. Yeah, there's a fire involved, but it's like linking it is not is something you can do. But it's not just about, it's not the same at all in 2, and it's not the same at all in 3. And it just blows my mind how you could just look at the most basic, tiny little granule and say, because this is the same, everything around it doesn't matter, the story is just derivative. Like, again, come on. It's very disappointing. Anyway, I like Dark Souls. It's a good series. Zarya says, I think that kid will actually look back fondly at that moment because you literally gave him a code. I hope it's a good one. I hope so. Honestly, like, I don't think it was that bad or whatever. I just felt pretty bashful because it was like, I trying to be happy and trying to like create a positive memory, like you said, and I just felt bad because I think I scared him. That was not my intention. Annawil says, oh, yes, kids can get scared, but I would have done the same. I mean, if it's Halloween, it's supposed to be a little creepy. That's a good point. That's a good point. Suppose I shouldn't over-worry about it. Asaria says, thinking about what I've done in the corner after committing various war crimes in the kingdom. Yeah, exactly. Every game is just like, walk through a Walmart, you know, after Black Friday and decide what you want to try to loot off the shelves. And then, like, you sit in a little shopping cart. This metaphor doesn't work at all. I used to live in a place that was pretty remote, and there was a Walmart there that was just like basically a desert. I think it felt like it was the size of like a big old sports like amphitheater or something. It felt massive. But the shelves were usually unstocked, and there was usually shit, like not literal shit, thankfully, but like stuff all over the floor, because there was like nobody there. There's nobody shopping there. There's nobody really. There's like 1 or 2 clerks there somewhere. But you would go in, and it would just feel like this weird, like the back rooms or something like that. It would feel like a liminal space. And so I'm just imagining like Black Friday rush comes through there, and then everything is in total chaos, but it's also like quiet, and then there's like a couple of gremlins lurking in the corner. You know, a wild animal rushed in and is like starting to eat all the snacks, and you're just like, cool, I'm the king of this now. This is my house now. Okay, great. Fuck. Like that's basically your character at the end of Dark Souls 2, honestly.
Blindly reusing the same ideas has also resulted in a game where the story and the world don't match the theme.
Also, blindly reusing, like, fuck off with that. Like, they made a decision to use these themes and they did so in a creative way. I don't know how you could get off on saying, like, it was a blind decision. I get that it's probably hyperbole. He's just, like, expressing how he feels about it, and that's okay. But in retaliation, I'm like, yeah, no, that's kind of a crappy thing to say.
In the intro and NPC dialogue, there's lots of talk of forgetting, people losing their grip on their pasts as they hollow. This could have made for a really compelling theme, but the game itself does little to back it up. Dark Souls 1 was about the end of an age, which was possibly the end of the world altogether. They drove this home with the theme of fire that clearly encapsulates the message.
Everything the light doesn't touch is your kingdom. Yeah, pretty much. That's Koth. Like, I can see Koth, like, totally saying that in Mufasa's place. Just, like, dangling from the ceiling like an asshole. Like,
Eventually, every flame burns itself out. The bonfires in Estus are obviously designed to evoke this theme, and pyromancy was spun off into its own branch of magic, giving them a reason to include more fire spells. The introductory video starts by talking about fire, and the game itself ends at the kiln of the first flame. There's no equivalence in Dark Souls 2 apart from the giant memories, which are extremely brief and come right at the end of the story. This game could have easily just taken place very far away from Lordran and had nothing to do with linking the fire or the undead curse. All the team had to do was get a bit more creative. Alternatively, they could have just not linked it to Dark Souls 1 at all. I mean, who's to say the Dark Souls games need to take place in the same world?
well, it's interesting because they sort of do take place in the same world, but they sort of don't, and that is, like, a big part of the story. The idea in Dark Souls 2, like, I think it's pretty clear that they do take place literally on some of the same physical locations, but that's, I guess, still up for interpretation to a certain extent. More to the point, I think the real thing that I find compelling about it is the way that, like, archetypes are changed and mutated and shifted and inherited, almost like genes, or I guess memes, in the traditional sense, not in, like, the LOL cats internet stuff sense. Through the generations, right? Like, you see the soul of Seath, or, like, the soul of the old Iron King, for example, is probably, if not definitely, I only say probably because I kind of second guess myself, but, like, I'm pretty sure it's Gwyn's soul, like, literally. But Gwyn himself didn't come back, right? And the old Iron King is not literally Gwyn. So the reason why Gwyn's soul is brought back is because it's described as, like, the soul of the ineffable. It's the soul of something that is intrinsic to the world. It's one of the four sort of primary, like, original forces that was spawned into the world when the first, like, Gwyn's age began. And it's not so much that Gwyn himself has come back or is, like, an incarnation of Indra or Ashura, It's more like the weight, the heaviness, the importance, the significance of Gwyn's, like, pride and hubris and, like, conquering nature or whatever. All of that sort of thing doesn't just leave the world when somebody who holds it dies. Like, think of all of the great and powerful and terrifying, I say great with, like, massive fucking air quotes because, like, I'm not a fan of, like, colonization and conquering shit, but, like, all, like, the great conquerors that you could think of, like Alexander the Great or Julius Caesar or Genghis Khan or Attila the Hun or whoever else, like Hannibal or whatnot, right? And all of them accomplished incredible mighty feats and, like, toppled mighty enemies and spanned mighty empires. Napoleon is another one who comes to mind, right? Oh, they were so legendary. Oh, they accomplished so much. They all got fucking toppled, right? They all lost eventually. Some of them died horribly. Like, Alexander definitely did. Caesar definitely did. I don't know about all the rest. But at the end of the day, none of that shit really takes you anywhere. Because it all kind of, like, ends in disaster. Sooner or later, somebody else will come along and usurp you and destroy what you built. But then it's not like, oh, okay, when Napoleon was defeated, then European imperialism was also defeated, right? It just leaves a power vacuum and somebody else steps in and takes over. And this keeps on going. And so after a while, it's like, okay, how many times, and I'm talking about the real world now, how many times do we have to successfully defeat impossible odds? How many times do we have to see, like, um, invincible, enduring legacies, like, of people who are divinely inspired, like, blessed by God and whatever, just, like, become sick and decrepit and fucking die, and everything they owned, like, go up in flames, before we start to realize that none of this matters. This is Dark Souls 2 talking. I'm not so nihilistic myself, right? Where none of this matters, and then start to despair that we don't have a better solution to this. So this is made manifest in Dark Souls 2 by Gwyn's soul literally still being a thing, like an object that hangs around and exerts its influence. And it will be picked up. It will, like, the mantle will be maintained by someone else that will try to do a better job, but inevitably fail and fall apart, right? And so that's why Hade's Tower of Flame winds up looking a bit like Anor Londo. It might be literally built on the ruins of Anor Londo, or it might just be, like, visually thematically linked to it. It matters if you're a lore nerd like I am, but it actually, like, kind of doesn't matter, because it's more about the archetype of the place itself, right? The Way of Blue or the Blue Sentinels have invaded it or taken it over, or maybe that is their headquarters and they're just invading other places. It's a parallel to, like, Velka's covenant and Gwendolyn's covenant and all that. And so, despite the fact that the entire place has drowned, an entire civilization has come and gone, there are still people out there who are pointing themselves as, like, justiciars, and who are going about dispensing justice and seeking revenge and stuff like that, because revenge is not going to leave the world just because a king died. You know, the idea of, like, a I don't know, moral police force that is itself corrupt is not going to go away just because Anor Londo is gone. And so I think that the way that Dark Souls 2 tries to handle this is tries to say, like, let's take all these concepts and let's just make them manifest as, like, physical things that influence the land and continue to be, exerting their force on their surroundings, and then see what happens. Like, what kinds of kingdoms emerge from that? What kinds of problems do they have? How do they try to solve that? And what do they build on the ruins? And then Dark Souls 3 comes along and says, yeah, what if we watch all of that fucking burn? All of that stuff is now getting mushed together and, like, crashing and disintegrating in this giant upheaval in one last hurrah, so to speak. So I think it's necessary for Dark Souls 2 to take place vaguely in Lordran. It doesn't matter if it's literally physically there, but it needs to share some of the bones of it for them to tell the story that they want to. And that needs to happen so that we can lead to Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 is not powerful. It doesn't hit the same way it does without Dark Souls 2 in the middle. You can't have it land the same way. So I find it very cynical and very, again, myopic to look at this and be like, oh, the only reason they did this in Dark Souls 2 is so that they could get away with having Dark Souls 3. They just blindly reinserted it so that we can have the inevitable Dark Souls 3. Like, hey, if you don't want Dark Souls 3, that's fine. You don't have to play it. You don't have to participate in it. But, like, they took this sort of ambiguous, almost nothing ending from Dark Souls 1 and wove it into a prequel for the disintegration of the world itself in Dark Souls 3. They tied everything together. I like it quite a bit. Fuck. Anyway. Saria says, that feels a bit unfair to say they didn't get creative when there's so much crazy nonsense. Yes. Going on in 2 compared to 1 or even 3 in my opinion. Yeah, if anything, 3 feels like a little safer in some regards. Depends on what part of it you're looking at, though, I suppose. It feels like more bombastic, more cinematic, for sure. Saria says, I'm not a fan of conquering and shit. Way to go, woke John, unsussed and disliked. Well, that's fine, man. Like, if you're one of those, like, pro-conquering weirdos who thinks, like, I don't know, Napoleon was hot or whatever, just because he got played by Joaquin Phoenix or whatever, then fine. I don't need your sub anyway. I'd prefer if you stay, though. And it will says, if the things in Dark Souls 2 did not happen, you could not choose some of what I think are the best endings. Oh, yeah. So I would actually be curious to hear you elaborate on that. What are your favorite endings? I guess in the series overall, but I'm assuming you're talking about Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 is the one that I think I understand the least of in terms of the choices of endings. I'm still totally perplexed by the one where you like you crush the firekeeper and you like offer the flame up to the symbol in the sky, which I guess is supposed to be the ring city eclipsed by the sun or moon or something. I'm so confused by the endings of Dark Souls 3. I mean, obviously I get the Link the Fire and the Age of Dark, but the other two are just like really odd, and I would love to hear what you have to say.
Of course, all this means they ended up retreading the lore of the first game as well as the story. If you're anywhere as cynical as I am, you might have seen this coming. One of the earliest questions I asked myself after they announced Dark Souls 2 was how much Solaire pandering there was going to be. I can't even begin to tell you how hard my eyes rolled once I read the description for the Great Lightning Spear and saw it talk about a grossly incandescent father.
Okay, so again, like if you I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting Dark Souls 2 to be its own thing. If that's what he wanted and that's what he didn't get that, then that's okay. Like I'm not gonna argue against that. That's totally fine. What I will say though is that like people like Solaire, and including a vague reference to him, like one single reference to him in Dark Souls 2, doesn't strike me as pandering. And even if it is pandering, it's like so what? You know, if they changed the story or compromised it, or you know, like if it really broke immersion, if this was like the one exception they made, you know what, like patches again, fucking complain about patches again. Patches inclusion in Dark Souls 3, in Elden Ring, to me felt like patches pandering. This doesn't feel like patches. Let me try this again. 1 second. The inclusion of patches in the video game Elden's Rings did not feel like this, because patches felt like patches pandering, because it wasn't supposed to be there, and it felt like it kind of broke the game to put him in there in the first place. It felt like the only reason it was there was so that he could be there. Whereas for this, it feels like a little Easter egg for people who like Solaire. There's one spell out of however many, and I don't really see that just being a big problem. It seemed like a nice little nod. Yeah. There's a lot of other stuff in here, like he wasn't really mad about the reference to Evlana, or to Paris, the bow hunter person. Right? There's a very, very specific reference there. I'm really upset about that. I guess he just doesn't like Solaire. I mean, I get it. It's annoying. It's like if there is a reference to the cake being a lie in Half-Life Alyx, if there's a reference to the cake being a lie in Half-Life Alyx, I'm gonna like eat my VR headset because I don't like that was funny for a game like 10 years ago, but or longer, shit. But you know, I don't need that all over the place. So if that's what he's saying, like I feel like this is a meme that just won't die, and I want to see it go. It's annoying me. Okay, fine. You know what? I'm not going to argue against that, but I think it's excessive. Rolling your eyes because there's one reference to Solaire. Come on.
Solaire is one of my favourite characters in any of the Souls games, but he has absolutely no place in Dark Souls 2. We're talking about a time frame where nearly everything from the time of Lordran has been forgotten, but the one covenant which happens to survive intact just happens to be the same one the community won't shut up about. It makes no sense, and it's clearly just playing into the attachment people have to Solaire. You can even leave praise the sun messages if you want to run it even further into the ground.
I don't know. I don't sympathize with this at all. I don't really want to argue it too much, but I do think that there is a definite reason why this covenant is still surviving. You know, there are certain people who maintain like a reference to the old pantheon. They don't ever reference Solaire specifically. They also don't ever reference Gwyn specifically. It's just sort of like an ancient faith and tradition that they've managed to keep up. I guess they could have made it a little bit more abstract or more derivative. That would have been fine too. It doesn't really bother me.
The last thing I ever
Oh, Anna Will says, my favorite is usurpation of fire, because I think if you take that flame, that land might heal, and yes, you can start the cycle again in another place. Interesting. Okay, so you're actually like taking the flame away from the current land and like unlinking it from the fire. That's really cool. I hadn't thought about that before. I'm gonna need to replay Dark Souls 3, damn it.
Ever wanted a Souls game to do was pander to people in this kind of way, especially since the games are known for their bleak atmospheres. Miyazaki fully expected people to like Solaire, but for the vast majority of players, he died a horrible death down in Lost Izalith. I might be giving him too much credit, but I always got the impression that Miyazaki had a lot more answers about the worlds of Demon Souls and Dark Souls than he ever gave anyone. Even if he didn't understand everything, he probably had a good idea what the backstory was for many of the elements which ended up being presented to players as mysteries.
I'm going to guess that he probably does, because I think it would be very, very difficult to effectively construct a world, even if you're leaving things out that the players don't get access to, like leaving answers out that they never get. It's very, very hard to design a world like this without a very, very clear and consistent vision. So there needs to be something mapped out and like defined. It's not like a improvisational guitar playing or something like that. You can't really make it up as you go. Does he have every single answer? Maybe not. Maybe he has like different headcanons or different alternatives or whatnot. But at least the core underlying bedrock foundation, whatever. Yeah, that needs to be solid. In my opinion, maybe he just works in a completely different way, but everything I've seen, like the game development studios I've worked at, if one of those things doesn't exist, the game just like doesn't work. It doesn't come out, it gets canceled because fucking like we don't know what we're doing because there's no clear vision, right? So
I got that impression because that's his style. He developed it to recreate a feeling he had from reading Western fantasy books when he was younger, and his English comprehension left him speculating about many of the details he couldn't understand. This seems like something the Dark Souls 2 team tried to replicate and simply weren't able. There's a big difference between having an idea, then ripping out a few chunks so that it looks incomplete, and building an idea to be incomplete in the first place.
I agree with that, but I never got the sense that Dark Souls 2 worked like that. Also, I really like that mechanic there with the fire getting turned out by the waterfall. I forgot about that. That was really cool. Anna Will says, and with the Firekeeper ending, I think you burden her with it. She is so different after you give her the eyes. That's true. She has a very distinct change in personality after that. It definitely feels like a very somber and sad moment. And the music changes in Firelink Shrine too, right? Kind of signifies that there is something, you know, persistent and serious about the world that your actions have like inflicted, so to speak. That's a very good point.
It's designed to bait people into drawing connections to Dark Souls 1 based on flimsy evidence.
Well, hang on. What do you say?
A few chunks so that it looks incomplete, and building an idea to be incomplete in the first place. It's designed to bait people into drawing connections to Dark Souls 1 based on flimsy evidence.
I think there is very clear evidence as to what is happening in Dark Souls 2 with regards to Dark Souls 1. There's definitely some stuff that's a bit more ambiguous, like I don't know why Havel's down here, but or maybe it's just somebody wearing his armor, maybe it's one of his knights. But I mean, like, the game is not shy about there being characters and objects and stuff that are brought back in from Dark Souls 1. I don't really see the problem.
At best, I can say this slightly reinforces that theme of forgetting I mentioned a moment ago, but it left me inherently uninterested in the world of Dark Souls 2 itself, since it seemed too preoccupied with forming connections to the original.
Again, sorry, a sequel maintaining connections to the original and then iterating on them, that makes it hard for you to enjoy the game. I just, like, can't relate to that at all.
It's bad enough that Nashandra is connected to Manus, but New Game Plus reveals that the 4 old ones are connected to Nito, Gwyn, Seath, and the Witch of Izalith. Without Miyazaki directing, this game may as well be fanfiction, the difference being some fanfiction writers would have the good sense not to bring back the spirit of every major boss from the last game.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I already kind of covered what I was saying before. I covered what I would say to this with what I said before. The only thing I guess I could say to expand on it is that that the DLCs further expanded on the idea that of characters being connected to Menace. I don't know why it's bad enough. Like, I just personally don't get why it's a problem. And I don't know how I would effectively argue against that, other than just to say that that kind of perspective, like, this is a reference to something that occurred previously, therefore it's bad. Like, I think it just kind of cheats you from the opportunity of really trying to appreciate why the connections were there in the first place. Like, if you're just automatically going to be like, these are connections, therefore there's something insincere or unacceptable about them, you're just gonna miss out on a lot of cool shit, in my opinion. Let's catch up on chat. Saria says, okay, I have to rant. I really hate that condescending. I feel like I'm giving him too much credit. It's so annoying. Coming from a fandom that gets mad when information doesn't fit their headcanons. It's giving the same vibe as people who say Aonuma and the Zelda team don't care about the lore when they've had a timeline document since 2002. Like, yeah, everything is planned to a T, but dude, obviously there's some form of general outline or thought put into these games. Zelda nor Dark Souls would flow as well as they do into each other. Like, give the guys a break, why don't you? Yeah, I mean, that's very, very well said, Saria. That's the thing, I kind of vaguely understand where he's coming from, because, again, like, if what you personally want and value and want to see or think is, like, better art is this game kind of branching off and doing its own thing, and it just seems to stubbornly not want to let go of the past, then that's, that could potentially be annoying. I'm trying to think of, I can't think of a good example, but I played a game recently where, or I wonder how people are feeling about this, about, like, Deltarune, for example. No spoilers, but, if you've played like an hour of Deltarune Chapter 1, you'll know that there are a lot of things that are similar to things in Undertale. And after a certain point, I think people become invested in Deltarune's own thing. And then if, like, I don't know, Sans kept showing up and saying, like, hey, you did a good job on that boss, I was worried you might have a bad time. But, you know, like, constantly throwing references and making puns and stuff like that. Not even the puns, because he does make puns and that's fine. But just you know, constantly referring back to and using memes and using, like, in jokes and stuff that you would only get if you've played the previous games. Then that could break the immersion, that could break the experience of just appreciating Deltarune for what it is. But Deltarune is like a sequel, a spiritual sequel. It incorporates characters and events and things from the previous game for a reason. And so, like, are you gonna sit there and be like, oh, of course Toby Fox would bring back Sans, it's Sans pandering, everybody knows who Sans is, and, like, he's a fan favorite character, so of course he brought back. God, like, come on. I guess I could say maybe he was, like, trying to do something interesting with the character, you know, and just be like, fuck, man. Let the guy cook, you know. Let's see what he's doing with his universe before you just dismiss it out of hand because it has something familiar in it. I don't like that personally, but whatever. Let's see. Annabelle says, Firekeeper ending, I think you burdened her. I saw that. Okay. I think the eyes belonged to the Firekeeper from Gundyr, so she can see that Age of the Dark might not be the answer, but it's just my opinion about it. That makes a lot of sense, right? Because you get it, you get that set that you give her from that sort of darkened shrine, right? I wondered if it was like the eyes of the first Firekeeper ever, but I have no way of verifying that. Like, it was, I heard a fan theory that it was like the eyes of Anastasia or something. I don't think she was even the first one, but something like that, like somebody from the age of, like Gwyn's age. But I think it makes more sense for them to be the eyes of somebody who had a more profound insight into the darkness, you know? I'm not sure that, like, Anastasia ever experienced that. Okay, we're almost done. Power through.
So far, I haven't even mentioned the misleading advertising Namco participated in before the game's release. Personally, as someone living in Europe who ignored the pre-release info, this affected me a lot less than most people, since I was in the dark anyway, and the controversy started before I even had a chance to buy my copy. Many in America weren't quite so lucky, and discovered the graphical downgrade the day of the game's release.
Yeah, we talked about this before in some significant detail. I do think it is unfortunate that the game got downgraded, so to speak, talked about how, like, basically for trade show, you know, demos and stuff like that, the games will usually run on a very specific version that is designed to like hype up the presentation, and the hope is to ship the final game with that same level of panache, but a lot of the times it just doesn't happen, and it can feel dishonest. I guess it sort of is. It's usually not intentional dishonesty, but it's more like over-promising and then failing to deliver. But at the end of the day, the effect is the same. That, like, fans expect a certain thing, and then they don't get it, and it feels kind of shitty, so.
After they had already bought it. The speculation about why exactly the visuals don't match up in the final release still runs rampant, and we may never have a definitive answer, but really the why doesn't matter much. How the game is presented to the public is the responsibility of Namco, and even if they did initially plan for the demo graphics to represent the final version, they should have had plenty of time to inform people before release by showing more accurate footage.
Yeah, so just consider that, like, if they showed the footage originally, if they showed the footage in its release version as part of that promo, right? They just, like, took footage from the game that was unaltered. It was, like, the same version of the game or whatever. People in the audience might not have gone, oh my god, this lighting engine is so amazing. I want to play this game because of its lighting. They might have just been like, oh, okay, it looks fine, I guess. It looks kind of like PS2-y, but I'll still play it. As opposed to being promised something more and then being denied that thing, then it's like indignant rage, right? Mild disappointment and disinterest is always preferable to, like, the anger of a nerd who feels they've been cheated. So.
Misrepresenting the product isn't an acceptable way to treat potential customers. I hope they learn their lesson for next time, and I certainly hope for more skepticism from the community until Namco earns that trust back. All that said, top-notch graphics were never a priority for the Souls games. The controversy surrounding the visuals has dramatically overshadowed the conversation about the game's other, more disappointing design decisions. The way I see it, the bait-and-switch Namco pulled is just the cherry on top of the heap of disappointment I felt with Dark Souls 2, not the other way around.
Okay, so on the one hand, I can give him praise for, praise and empathy for a couple things. The praise being that he seems to think that he has raised a valid concern that there are deep fundamental problems with the game from his perspective that are not being discussed about because people are just focusing on the superficial thing. And that can be a problem. If you want to actually evaluate the quality of a piece of art and people are just hyperfixated on one little thing, like, for example, The Last of Us 2. We were talking about this in Sage's server, the TV show, no spoilers or anything. But, you know, people are just really upset because Bella Ramsey doesn't look like Ellie's, digital model. There's more to it than that. I'm not trying to straw man, but there are some people who literally they're just, like, fucking furious about that, and specifically just that, right? She doesn't look the same. And as a result, a lot of the discourse around the show has been either people saying, like, Bella Ramsey's the worst thing to happen to television, and then other people responding to that by saying, like, you're weird, creepy idiots, what's wrong with you? And then in the meantime, it's like, hey, can we talk about the show? Because actually there's some things that it does good and some things that it does not very well, and, like, the pacing here is weird, and the dialogue here is weird, and the characterization here is weird. Can we talk about that? Everybody's like, she's ugly. No, she's not. You're stupid. No, you're not. I'm stupid. Yes, that's right. Wait, what? Fuck. Like, just engaging, like, these really petty back and forths that go nowhere. Can we just talk about the fucking show, please? You know what I mean? So I get that. He thinks that that's happening with Dark Souls 2. Maybe it was given the benefit of the doubt there, and I would sympathize with that. The other thing is the way that the game is presented to the public, the disappointment. He was hoping for something specific with Dark Souls 2. He was disappointed, and I'm not going to say that, like, he's not allowed to, right? Not allowed to be. However you feel about the game, if you were looking for a specific experience and you feel like you got cheated, you didn't get the game that you really wanted, that sucks. It sucks to experience that. I'm sorry that happened. I wish it was different. I don't think that necessarily means the game is bad. I think that's a personal preference thing, but I want to acknowledge it.
Forgive the massive incoming pun, but honestly my biggest problem with Dark Souls 2 is that it has no soul.
I will not forgive you.
The gameplay takes one step back for every step forward. The atmosphere just isn't there, the story has the same outcome, and the lore is designed to be as ambiguous as possible. I'd have been happier
I really don't agree with that at all. There's like plenty of very obvious lore, and then there's stuff that is ambiguous, but I don't find it any more ambiguous than Dark Souls 1 inherently.
Had the team struck out with their own vision a bit more, or adhered more closely to the feel of the world in Dark Souls 1, but instead we're left with something stuck in the middle.
It feels very, it's very bizarre to have a game that goes from like just it goes all the different places, from like, I don't know, Amana to Dragon Eyrie to Iron Keep to the Black Gulch, and be like, this game didn't strike out enough. Like, what the fuck?
Sometimes they tried to imitate the feel of Miyazaki's games, and at other times they went the opposite direction. On the whole, it ends up being nothing more than a bland, disjointed iteration on Dark Souls 1, which might have been forgivable had they fixed more of the issues from the first game. Instead, some of them are fixed, but new problems are introduced in their place, like going through 2 load screens just to level up.
You don't. That's not true. Oh wait, hang on. As in going to like back to town. Yeah, I guess that's irritating. That's fine.
I'm not sure I've ever tried so hard to love a game and just been completely unable.
Okay, so let's give him the benefit of the doubt here, right? Like, a lot of the time I felt that his critique was sort of incurious and like sort of gently hostile. But I want to accept him at face value in his saying that, like, I genuinely wanted to like this and I was just disappointed. I don't think he did a great job with his critique per se. Or in other words, like, he obviously put a lot of effort and time and thought into collecting his thoughts and trying to make his like turn his feelings about the game into something concrete. And I appreciate that. I disagree with a lot of the analysis itself, but like, I can sympathize with being in that position, you know. And like, I think we should give him the benefit of the doubt that he's being sincere, even if like we don't agree with his conclusion.
I wanted to love Dark Souls 2 so much, but when I wasn't bored by the bland level design, I found myself frustrated by the repetitive, anticlimactic bosses. There were so many points where I asked myself why I wasn't just playing one of the other games instead. If you ask me, it doesn't even come close to being a worthy successor to Demon's Souls or Dark Souls.
Strong disagree, but okay.
The series has always had flaws, and Dark Souls 2 is no exception. Only this time around, the redeeming qualities are harder to see than ever.
Kind of interesting that, like, I wonder where he looked up the composer at the time, because I'm pretty sure Sakuraba contributed to this, but Kitamura is the only one who's actually listed in the credits here.
One of the central themes of Dark Souls 2 is forgetting. It's ironic, and quite sad, that I found the game itself to be very forgettable.
Another pun. I won't forgive you for that one either. Okay. Swear to God, my shit is cursed. Anyway, so yeah. In summary, hang on. I'm sorry. Anne is your name, basically saying you'll bloom, or is it a reference to Blossom from PPG? Interesting. I'll be curious. Yeah. So that's pretty much all I had to say about that. It's really interesting. Over the years, my opinion and perspective on the game itself, but also on this review in particular, has gradually shifted. And I kind of find it surprising, like, how much it shifted to a certain extent. But going back to this review, even though I wind up disagreeing with a lot of the stuff that I used to agree with, I think it's been a very positive experience, because it kind of motivated me to pick up the game, to go through it again, to share that experience with y'all, and to really try to listen to the arguments and understand them. Oftentimes I find that when I'm skeptical to an argument, that I need to kind of go and check the source in order for me to feel confident responding to it. And I feel like doing so both helped me appreciate Matthew more as a reviewer, even though I disagree with his take, and also appreciate the game more in terms of both its strengths and its flaws. So I find this sort of thing to be a fun exercise. I appreciate folks who have been, with me on this little journey here. It's been, obviously a bit of a shake-up from the gameplay stuff, so I appreciate you being willing to try it out with me. And hopefully you got something positive out of it. I would love to hear what you think about all this in the comments section. If you'd like me to go back and kind of rehash anything or expand on my thoughts on anything, be more than happy to. Otherwise, I think we might be saying farewell to Dark Souls 2 for for the foreseeable. Check out Clair Obscur, I think next week. Try that out. And then at some point we'll go back to Elden Ring. At some point we'll go back to maybe the DLCs in Dark Souls 2. But I think in terms of the analysis, the dissection of the game, I think we're at a good stopping place. I am still open to talking about Feeble King, but, you know, it's a whole other, like, it's even, like, I disagree with the analysis here, but Feeble King is just, like, toxic at times, and so, I don't know, if going down that particular road definitely sets a tone that will last a month or so while we make our way through the video. So, let's take a break, let's, focus on some gameplay with, Clair Obscur, let's focus on, like, a bit of a lighter approach, I guess. And then we kind of regroup over the next few weeks and see how we feel about things. So with that being said, we're hitting the 3.5 hour mark, so I think I'm going to head out for the evening. I want to say thank you very much to Anawil, to Saria, to Kavak, and anybody else who might have stopped by and checked out the stream. Very, very, very much appreciate the conversation and the support. It was a great chat tonight. Hope you all have a great rest of your evening. I'll be back on Sunday, 6 p.m. EST. We'll be doing a Naruto stream. As usual, I still haven't figured out what exactly I want to talk about. I think I want to do one more on skepticism. I'm still kind of like peeved about the conversation with Sage, to be honest, and I'm working out why that is, and how to actually respond in a productive way. But hopefully I'll have that figured out by Sunday. Worst case scenario, we'll go back to the Kakashi versus Pain fight and just chill and have a, you know, like a more chill stream and then worry about the debate shit later on. But yeah, thank you so much. I'm gonna check on chat real quick and then I'm gonna head out. Saria says Clair Obscur. Yes, I'm really excited. I'm not gonna lie, I'm like super excited. Anna Will says it is my last name, but in the African language it is a flower or a bloom. It's a common surname in Scandinavia and German countries. Oh, that's so cool. I never heard that before, but that makes a lot of sense. Really cool name. Saria says Anna Will Bloom. Ah, that's incredible. Yes, I agree. That's cool. Yeah, thank you again. I appreciate, you know, you taking a chance on like clicking the random stream that came up or whatnot. Hope you got some enjoyment out of it. Appreciate you hanging out with us. I think that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys later. Have a great night.